Kamen Rider Marvel. Levi, a Transmigrator, traveled through the Marvel world and accidentally stumbled upon the Kamen Rider Legacy System. As the result, he silently established his position as a pillar of this world, standing atop the legacy he got from Hiden Intelligence, World Tree, Shocker, and many other sources. The Consortium X will stand atop this world to rule it. Chapter 1, Hiden Intelligence. This is the summer of the year 2008. Manhattan's night sky was brightly lit. The Hilton Hotel, located in the center of Manhattan, was crowded and bustling. Right now, a technological summit led by the officials would be held inside it. The guests were either rich or noble. On the outskirts of the hotel, there were already crowds watching the action. Whenever a guest arrives, a loud cheering can always be heard. And many loud exclamations. When a custom-made silver-gray sports car arrived, the crowd immediately went into a small climax. Because the person who came was none other than the president of Stark Industry, Tony Stark. As a well-known playboy in New York City, his arrival meant the birth of the news. As soon as he got out of the car, countless reporters swarmed him. The girl in the car was a little scared for a moment. As for Tony, he enjoyed the feeling of being the center of attention. He held his female companion in his arms and walked out of the car. As he walked, he raised his hand flamboyantly and waved at the audience outside with a smile. He looked very flashy. Soon, he arrived at the official signature wall. With a quick brush, he signed onto it. He adjusted his collar and was ready to accept interviews from the reporters. However, at this moment, outside the runway, we could hear a roar of a sports car. Immediately after that, a sports car with a very fancy design drove over from a distance. Then, with a flashy drift, it steadily stopped at the periphery of the red carpet. This action immediately attracted the attention of a large number of people. What an awesome sports car! But why have I never seen this model of sports car before? Which big shot is here again? The logo on this sports car, isn't it the logo of Hiden Intelligence? What? Hiden Intelligence? For a moment, everyone was surprised. For a moment, everyone's eyes were glued to it. Right at this moment, they are all glued to the sight of the sci-fi-shaped sports car with gull-wing doors open. Immediately after, a handsome young man wearing a white windbreaker walked out of the car. His appearance instantly attracted the attention of all the women present. So handsome! This is the president of the Hiden Intelligence. Someone recognized this man's identity. Even he came to participate in this summit. For a moment, everyone's enthusiasm was ignited. Even the reporters who were preparing to visit Tony smelled the wind. They immediately abandoned Tony and rushed in his direction, trying to capture the man's photo. Yes. Tony, who had been left out, could not help but raise his eyebrows. He had not expected things like this. There is someone who can steal his spotlight. Jarvis, help me find information about this guy. Tony raised his hand. He gently tapped the light-colored glasses he was wearing. There was a buzzing sound. The edge of the light-colored glasses immediately lit up. The lens quickly scanned the situation in front of it and searched along with the internet. Soon, a result came out. Sir, the other party is the CEO of Hiden Intelligence, Mr. Levi. This is the full result of the search. Please take a look. Very quickly, Jarvis projected his search results onto the glasses screen. There were very few contents on the screen. There were only a few lines of introduction and pictures. Hiden Intelligence. It's the company that refused our investment. Tony seemed to remember something. He still had a certain knowledge of this company. This Hiden Intelligence was a recently rising technological company. It was first created 3 years ago. Its initial product was a smart drone. When it released, it immediately shocked the industry. Because the level of the drone was far beyond the technology at that time. Whether it was precision or flight, it could be said to be perfect. Even Tony was slightly shocked. He even personally bought a drone. He wanted to reverse engineer it. However, he did not expect that its core technology would have a password lock. Even a genius like him would not be able to crack it. Therefore, Tony immediately called the investment department of Stark Industry. He wanted them to purchase Hiden Intelligence. I must know the secret. This Stark Industry was like an existence that quickly soared through the internet. It was an absolute overlord. Any company, as long as they were connected to Stark Industry, could instantly take off. However, Hiden Intelligence, however, cleanly rejected the investment request of Stark Industry. He did not give any care at all. This made Tony, who was proud and arrogant, very angry for a while. Therefore, not long after, Stark Industry also launched a drone product. It was rumored that Tony personally studied the design. He initially thought that this move would be able to defeat this emerging enterprise. Unexpectedly, the drone sales did not catch up to a fraction of the Hiden Intelligence. Tony felt like his face was swept to the ground. After that, he no longer cared about the matters of this side. And in the next half year, this company launched several artificial intelligence products, one after another. Intelligent AR technology, high-tech scanning glasses, AI automated driving technology. Once the product was released, it immediately caused a sensation. Other technology companies also tried to buy them. However, the Hiden Intelligence did not care. In just 3 years, it had already grown into a super unicorn company worth nearly 10 billion yuan. And this flying electric AI. Apart from these artificial intelligence products, the founder was the most interesting. It was the founder of the Hiden Intelligence, Levi. On the internet, his information could be said to be very few. There were only some simple articles and a few photos. He was really mysterious. Chapter 2, Legacy of the Kamen Rider System. According to the information displayed, Levi is of a mixed blood. At the age of 18, he graduated from the College of Divine Arts and founded Hiden Intelligence. Logically speaking, a genius youth like him was definitely unwilling to be ordinary. He actually was extremely humble. He usually lived in seclusion and rarely appeared in public places. He also never accepted media interviews. Therefore, it was very rare for news about him to spread. But his popularity on the internet had always been high. On the other hand, America is a capitalist country. Compared to those old money conglomerates, people often preferred the kind of wealthy people who started from scratch. On the other hand, it is this mystery of his. Just as the saying goes, what you can't get is the best. It was because he was mysterious that it made people even more curious. Coupled with his handsome face, he had a large number of fans. So just now, as soon as he appeared, it immediately caused a stir. The limelight even overshadowed Tony Stark. And those reporters also rushed forward. They were here to snatch an exclusive photo. So that's the case. After reading the introduction, Tony became interested. According to the existing information, this Hiden Intelligence had not released any products for more than a year. And now, Hiden Intelligence's president was invited to participate in this science and technology summit. Could it be that there was a new product going to be released? Thinking of this, Tony was slightly itching. Jarvis, give me more detailed information. I want to see to what extent the current Hiden Intelligence has reached. He touched his chin and immediately said that to Jarvis. As he spoke, he walked towards the ballroom of the hotel. Yes. Jarvis immediately started his operation. He wanted to sneak into Hiden Intelligence's database and investigate. Do not be surprised. Our Mr. Tony Stark is not a gentleman. He often does this kind of thing. At this time, at the entrance of the venue, there were flashes. Facing the crowd, Li Wei's expression did not change much. He only had a polite smile on his face. He looked at the people in front of him and nodded slightly. There was a hint of emotion in his eyes. For a fact, he was not a person of this world but a transmigrator. He came to this world 3 years ago because of an accident. A world merged with a beautiful manga. Be aware. This beautiful world is extremely dangerous. It was not something that ordinary people could survive. Not to mention in the universe. Thanos, Dormammu, Galactus, and many other bigwigs are eyeing them. In this world, there are countless supervillains. It was challenging for ordinary people to survive. But fortunately, he was not an ordinary person. After crossing over, he found that he had a cheat ability. It was called the Legacy of the Kamen Rider System. After a simple investigation, he quickly understood the function of this system. It could help him obtain inheritances from various Kamen Riders universe. These inheritances were all-encompassing. It could be the technology or bloodline of those worlds. It could also be the characters or organizations of those worlds. However, this ability was not given to him for free. It needed to be exchanged with the world point. The so-called world point was the impact you had on this world. The greater the impact, the more world points would be obtained. As for the present world points, after accumulating to a certain amount, they would be able to reach a certain level. They would be able to unlock a Kamen Rider world and obtain the legacy within. Think of it. If he could unlock the world of Zio, world of Decade, and obtain the legacy of the Oma Zio, or the legacy of the Grand Zio. So now, even if Thanos came down, he would still be able to kill it. He will have the strength to fight. It was just that. It is not easy to obtain the legacy of the above two knights. The number of world points they needed was massive. So, what Li Wei needed to do now was continuously unlock the low-level Kamen Rider legacy. Then, he would use these inheritances to continue to develop and influence the beautiful world. From there, he would plunder the world points and prepare for future war. And at the beginning of his transmigration, the system also considerately unlocked one of the legacies of the Kamen Rider world for him as the initial reward. And in this world, it was Kamen Rider 01. In all fairness, the 01 plot was an ass-bull. But if we talk about the level of technology alone, 01 is one of the most advanced in its technology. And what Li Wei inherited was the scientific and technological knowledge of Kamen Rider 01. This knowledge is highly complex. Li Wei had long grasped some simple knowledge. And they had been developed. It became an actual product and was thrown into the market. As for some other scientific and technological knowledge, it was much more profound. It required continuous experiments to be applied and mastered. It was only a few months ago that he completely mastered this knowledge. This was why Li Wei lived in seclusion these past few years. Li Wei was studying this technology. He was not procrastinating. He created Hiden Intelligence. This Hiden Intelligence had obtained the Kamen Rider technology. In a few years, he had developed rapidly. He had inevitably touched the cake of some other old companies. And these old industries, naturally, they were unwilling to be overtaken by the younger generation. Thus, they joined forces. Together, they launched a channel block on Hiden Intelligence. Although it did not succeed in killing Hiden Intelligence. However, it caused the speed of its development to decrease significantly. This also led to Hiden Intelligence not releasing any product for more than a year. However, with the improvement of scientific and technological research, Li Wei was finally able to make a move and deal with the suppression of these companies. And the first step of his counterattack. They were here to participate in this technological summit organized by the officials. On the one hand, he wanted to use this to show Hiden Intelligence's strength. Let these old companies see the gap between them. And the other hand, he could also earn some world points. Why not? Thinking of this, the corners of Li Wei's mouth could not help but curl into a cold smile. Chapter 3, AI Showdown. Izu vs Jarvis. At this moment, the car door opened again. A beautiful girl in a white and green uniform walked out of the car. She wore a pair of professional-grade headphones and had a Hime cut. On the whole, it gave her a cute aura. It looked extremely cute. When everyone saw her, they exclaimed again. They all guessed the identity of this beautiful girl. When Li Wei saw this situation, he could not help but smile. This beautiful girl is his personal assistant. It was his first subordinate. Izu. Back when he opened the first world treasure chest. In addition to getting a bunch of blueprints for Zaya technology and Hiden technology, he also unexpectedly gained this maid secretary. For the past few years, Izu had always been by his side. She had helped him solve a lot of problems and could be said to be the best assistant. At this time, Izu ignored the gazes of everyone. He folded his hands in front of his abdomen and quietly came to Li Wei's side. After that, she then reported to Li Wei through her encrypted channel. President. Just a moment ago, someone with artificial intelligence has conducted a large-scale search on you. In this regard, Izu has blocked it according to your previous instructions. But the other party does not seem to intend to stop. At this moment, they are invading the company's internal network and trying to investigate the latest technological invention of the company. President, how should we deal with it? Izu asked, tilting her head. It looked adorable. It was very lovely. Oh. Interesting. Li Wei smiled. Looks like someone is very interested in me. Have you found out who it is? He put his hands behind his back and asked through the encrypted channel. Izu have investigated it. I have found the person behind him is President of Stark Industry, Tony Stark. May I ask if you want to use the Zia satellite to kill him? Aizu continued to ask. Although her tone was very cute. However, the information contained within it was enough to make one's heart tremble. I was wondering who it was. A faint smile appeared on Li Wei's face. If he remembered correctly, this fellow had sent someone over a few years ago. He wanted to purchase Hiden Intelligence. Unexpectedly, after a few years, he came to spy on his information again. It seemed. He still looked at him with one eye closed. Since that was the case, then he did not need to be polite anymore. Thinking of this, Li Wei raised his head. There's no need to kill them. In any case, everyone will know our latest results in a while. He said indifferently. After all, this was a public place. Besides, he still had some use for this future Iron Man. Of course. I still have to teach this guy a little lesson. Let him know that we, Hiden Intelligence, are not so easy to deal with. His tone suddenly became cold. As for Aizu, she did not care about this. She immediately nodded. Understood, President. She had been by the President's side for several years. She naturally knew what this President meant by a small lesson. Immediately, Aizu raised her head. Blue rays of light flashed through those adorable eyes. It was as if endless data was flowing within them. Satellite Zia initiating connection. A moment later, Aizu's data appeared in a world where blue and white intersected. This was the network space of Zia. As artificial intelligence, Aizu could freely travel between virtual and reality. This is Satellite Zia. Li Wei had personally designed it based on the blueprints in his hands. Its goal was to become the core of Hiden Intelligence. It was born from processing a massive amount of experimental data. It contained a large amount of precious experimental data and core information. It could be said that it was vital. And to enter it, it required an extremely high level of authority. Currently, only Li Wei and Aizu could freely enter and exit. And now, in the outer space of the network, artificial intelligence Jarvis was trying to break through its firewall, infiltrate the internal space and steal the confidential information inside. Only, no matter how hard it tried, no matter what method it used, it could not invade it. However, all of its actions were seen by Aizu. Aizu raised her hands. Shua, Shua, Shua. In front of her, countless virtual screens appeared. The countless numbers on them moved, looking spectacular. Aizu raised his finger. He quickly clicked on it. Activate the anti-invasion program. Intruder, artificial intelligence Jarvis, conduct data blockade. At this time, at the top of Stark Industry building, in a secret room, countless projection screens appeared. All sorts of data appeared on it. In the middle, an orange-yellow ball of light was constantly moving. It was the artificial intelligence created by Tony Jarvis. At the moment, it was carrying out the task that Tony had just assigned. It wanted to break through Hiden Intelligence's internal network. From there, it could find the answer to its master's request. Only, this time, the difficulty was several times more complex than any in the past. Even if it was operating at full power, it was also unable to enter Hiden Intelligence's body at all. However, at this moment, the projection lights around them suddenly stopped. Detected external data intrusion. Detected external data intrusion. Detected external data intrusion. No. The artificial intelligence, Jarvis, immediately reacted. He wanted to resist. But at this moment, it was already too late. It invested all of its operational abilities into cracking the firewall. The current situation. It was like a warrior who had removed his armor. He could not fight back at all. He could only allow the data to rush over crazily. Those tiny blue data are like chains. It instantly pierced into the orange-yellow light. In less than a moment, all the projections in the room dimmed. The artificial intelligence Jarvis had completely lost contact with the outside world. It was sealed within. He could no longer communicate with the outside. At this moment, in the virtual network of Zia, Aizu looked at the feedback on the screen and nodded with satisfaction. However, she still felt that something was missing. So, it once again hacked into Stark's internal network. He quickly searched for it. Then, he sent everything else into the email of some media outlets. After doing all of this, only then did Izu leave the virtual world space, satisfied. The entire process. It was very fast. In the real world, it lasted less than a second. Chapter 4, The Fall of Tony Stark. At this time, Tony, who was in front, had already walked into the venue. This Science and Technology Summit would only be held in a while. Therefore, before this, the organizer had a wine reception in advance. They let the participants get in touch with each other first. This was also an old tradition of the West. Tony had just walked in and immediately attracted the attention of many people. Instantly, many people rushed toward him. "Jarvis! Help me identify these guys in front of me," Tony said in a frivolous tone. The people in the hall were not ordinary people. Tony naturally wouldn't treat them like how he treated ordinary people. He still had to greet them when necessary. However, with his personality, he couldn't remember the existence of so many people. However, with the help of Jarvis' scan, in an instant, he knew the identity and information of these people. "Yes, sir." Artificial Intelligence Jarvis replied immediately. "Shua, Shua, Shua." In the mirror, several square boxes immediately appeared. The names of the people present were displayed. And Tony walked straight forward. The guests immediately greeted him with smiles on their faces. "Hey, Tony, nice to meet you." "Oh, Ethan. Long time no see." Tony shook hands with a fake smile on his face. He would not spend time with him. It's a hassle to remember the names of a bunch of mediocre guys. Look. How convenient it was now. And just when Tony was wearing glasses and using Jarvis to shuttle through the crowd, like a fish in water. However, something strange suddenly happened to the lens. First, the name on the top began to become chaotic. Then, one after another, red exclamation marks also jumped out. "Warning! Warning! 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 Jarvis is under attack! Jarvis is under attack! What? How is this possible?" When Tony saw this scene, he could not help but widen his eyes. Be aware. He is the one that personally designed Jarvis. He had spent countless efforts and time creating an artificial intelligence system. Its safety was unquestionable. It was a highly powered existence. How could he be attacked? At this moment, he did not have time to think about it. In the next second, the lens that was occupied by the red exclamation mark suddenly split open. Immediately after, a black smoke emerged from the frame. This movement caused the surrounding guests to be startled. He hastily retreated to the side. Even the guards, who were in charge of security, were alarmed and rushed out directly. Only Tony stood where he was, which could be considered extremely awkward. But fortunately, at this time, Tony's good friend, Colonel Loda of the military, just happened to see the scene. He quickly came up and rounded up the scene. "Everyone, I'm sorry. It's Tony's new invention that accidentally went a little awry." As he spoke, he grabbed Tony and quickly left the scene. When the guests saw this, they immediately started discussing it. The lousy person recalled how Tony looked just now and could not help but burst out laughing. This was good. It could be said that this moment made Tony lose his face. Damn it! In the bathroom, Tony threw his glasses on the ground and snarled. This was the first time he was so embarrassed. Then, he checked the other smart accessories on him. Without exception, all lost contact. Who exactly could have done it? Tony was suspicious. On this earth, there were only a handful of forces that could defeat Jarvis. Under normal circumstances, he would not fall out like this. Could it be? At this moment, Tony seemed to have thought of something. When he came in just now, he seemed to have asked Jarvis to investigate. A moment later, Jarvis got attacked. If one were to say that these two had no connection, he definitely would not believe it. But was Hiden Intelligence already so powerful? That was impossible. Just as Tony was still feeling suspicious, Levi brought Izu to the hall. Compared to the warm welcome that Tony had received just now, it was much better. His side was much quieter. After all, compared to Tony, this was the first time he had entered such an occasion. It was normal that no one present recognized him. Of course, Levi didn't feel too much about this. After all, he was not here to catch up. Levi walked into the field. Although the guests around him did not know who he was, they nodded politely. After all, in the upper class, no matter what, they would maintain their modesty. Li Wei took the wine glass from the waiter and shook it slightly. Then, he narrowed his eyes and glanced at the scene. Aizu, help me analyze it. The identities of these people here. Yes, President. Aizu nodded obediently. Then, a blue light appeared in her cute eyes. Compared to Jarvis, Aizu's skin was faster. It was just a glance. The entire venue was scanned. The identity information of the guests was also sent to Li Wei's encrypted device simultaneously. After a few glances, Li Wei couldn't help but smile. Oh, looks like there are a lot of people here. He raised the glass in his hand and took a sip. Hammer Industries. Osborne Industries. A.I.M Industries. Rahcon Corporation. Umbrella Corporation. The top executives of these top-ranked companies in the United States were all present. Chapter 5, First Step of the Game, Military Meeting. You have to know. These companies. Each one of them was an existence that could make the industry shakes with a snap of their finger. I didn't expect to see them all gathering today. But thinking about it, it made sense. According to the information obtained by Li Wei, this technology summit was not as simple as it appeared on the surface. Because of those present. Apart from these technology giants, the most important people were the VIP from the government. Aizu scanned it briefly. He presented the data to Li Wei. At this summit, there were 25 people from the military. There were 12 important people from the Federation government. As for the continent government, there were 52 people. And every one of them was not a low-ranked officer. With so many government officials here, it was not difficult to explain the importance of this science and technology summit. According to his previous intelligence analysis, this was not a science and technology summit. It was better to say that it was a research meeting before the government shopping spree. In fact, in this world, who was the most wealthy buyer? He believed that all the consortiums present had the same answer. The US government. Yes. As one of the most powerful organizations in the world, its annual expenses were undoubtedly astronomical. Military. Biology. Space navigation. They feel free to do so with their budget. It was enough to make the financial groups present eat until their brains were full of fat. For example, Hammer Industries. Back then, it was just an unknown little firearm merchant. It was unknown what kind of dog shit luck it had. Surprisingly, the military was selected to purchase from them as a top order. Therefore, this Hammer Industries immediately took off on the spot. The market value increased by leaps and bounds. The journey was wild. In just a few years, it became America's second largest military industry. It was second only to Stark Industry. It could be said, as long as they were selected, they would become the government's supplier. Then, its future will be limitless. Moreover, this supplier was not the same. In fact, to avoid falling behind in technology, this US government, every 5 years, they would choose and inspect the enterprises on the surface of the city. Then, they would select a batch of enterprises to become their new supplier. And now, the 5-year period had arrived. The US government's new round of inspection and selection was about to begin. This time, the Science and Technology Summit was the first round of the entire inspection. Therefore, many enterprises had already made preparations. They all rubbed their palms together, preparing to show off their skills at this technological summit. Show your muscles. For this, even the usually arrogant Tony had personally come. He wanted to get a piece of the pie for Stark Industry in this feast. This showed the importance of this Science and Technology Summit. Looking at everyone present, Li Wei shook the red wine glass in his hand and revealed an imperceptible smile on his face. This technology conference was a grand stage. That being the case. In that case, he had to show it off later. And at this moment, several figures suddenly appeared on the second floor of the hotel lobby. The lights also suddenly gathered on their bodies. Seeing them arrive, everyone present immediately quieted down and looked towards the second floor. Li Wei also followed the crowd's gazes and swept his gaze over. Only to see that on the second floor of the fence, a few men with beards are standing high and looking down on the crowd. The one in the middle was wearing a military uniform. On his chest were a few shiny badges. His gaze was dignified and his expression serious. At first glance, it was clear that he was an existence that was not to be trifled with. According to the scan, Levi quickly identified this person. He was General Ross from the military. Speaking of which, this guy had a lot of experience in the military. He also had a vast network of connections. Now, he was a lieutenant general. Later, he was even promoted to become a national military official in Captain America 3. It could be said that he held a high position. And now, this fellow could be said to be one of the most important figures at this summit. Because in its hands, he holds the military's purchasing power. One had to know. The military was the richest among the government orders. And if the military wanted to purchase some orders, they had to be approved by him. From this, one could see the importance of General Ross. As for the person standing beside him, his identity was also high profile. His current identity was the council president of the New York continent. He comes from a political family, and his family is on par with the Kennedy. He was the president of the United States for more than 10 years, a powerful competitor. As for the last one, compared to the first two, he was a little inconspicuous. He was the director of the New York police station, George Stacy. In the original work, he was also the father of the female spider, Gwen Stacy. These three people represented the military, government, and police system. He was also one of the 3 members of the judging committee for this Science and Technology Summit. As long as he could obtain their approval, naturally, he would not have to worry about the order. Welcome, everyone, to participate in this Science and Technology Summit. General Ross looked down at the people below and said in a deep voice. Now, almost everyone is here. Then, the Science and Technology Summit will officially begin after sipping this lovely drink. Finished speaking, General Ross raised his cup and looked down at the people below. The people below naturally didn't dare to be the slightest bit negligent. They also quickly raised their glasses. He drank it all in one gulp. They were afraid of leaving a bad impression on the general. Only Levi was still swaying his glass. He shook the red wine in his hand and sipped it lightly. His expression was very pleasant. He stood out from the crowd. Naturally, General Ross saw it. However, he did not feel any dissatisfaction. He was just a little more interested in it. All right, everyone, go to the meeting room at the back. This Hilton Hotel, to host this technology summit. It was also specially remodeled, and the first half was set up in the form of a reception room. The latter half was arranged in a place similar to a press conference. After General Ross finished his announcement, he turned and left. As he walked, he asked the adjutant beside him. That young man just now, why have I never seen him before? As a higher up in the military, he was naturally knowledgeable. There were very few tycoons in the US who he did not know. But the young man just now, he had no memory of him at all. The adjutant next to him recalled for a moment. Only then did he reply. General, the one just now should be Hiden Intelligence's president, Mr. Levi. This should be his first time participating in a similar event. In fact, this kind of super technology summit, not just anyone could participate. Only by reaching a certain standard would one be able to obtain the qualifications to be invited. As for Hiden Intelligence, the time it had been established was too short. This was also the first time it had participated in such a large-scale summit. Oh. So that's how it is. General Ross had heard of this name before. Last year, the troops he managed had purchased a batch of Hiden Intelligence's supplies. This includes intelligent AI drones, infrared intelligent tactical goggles, and many other fun stuff. Although the scale was not big. However, the effect was surprisingly good. It increased their lethality at the front line by at least 20%. However, the damage was reduced by more than 30%. This left a deep impression on General Ross. So it's him. My daughter is always talking about this Hiden Intelligence. This company is very popular among young people. Chief George, who was beside him, also smiled and agreed. General Ross could not help but nod. He hoped that this company could bring him some surprises. Chapter 6, Weapon Competition. Umbrella vs Osborne. And the crowd heads to the back of the room for the technology launch. Then, they sat down according to the official seating arrangement. The front row was naturally the seats for General Ross and the others. After that, there were reserved seats for each company. And Levi's position was relatively remote. However, no matter which position it was, it didn't matter. They could see the big screen in the middle. It was used for the company product presentation. As for Tony, he also returned from the bathroom, but his expression was a bit ugly. Justin Hanmo, sitting next to him, couldn't help but tease him. Hey, Tony! What happened just now? I thought you wouldn't come back. I'm ready to open champagne to celebrate. As Stark Industries' main competitor, the grudges between the two companies could be said to have existed for a long time. So Hammer spoke without any politeness. Is that so? Then I'm going to disappoint you. Tony calmed himself down and sneered. But don't waste your champagne. I think your position as the second most successful company in the world is unstable. When you fall to be the third, I will help you drink. After saying that, Tony turned to look at Norman Osborn next to him. And Norman Osborn's face also became a little ugly. Initially, it was a competition between Hammer Industries and Stark Industry, but Tony's words also involved him. However, in fact, Norman Orizon was an ambitious person. The Osborn Industries under him initially focused on biological engineering. However, in recent years, they have been cooperating with the military. The scientists under him had also started to research military products. At this technology summit, he brought several results of those research. It was all for the sake of being able to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. The summit will be organized according to the scheduled time. The representatives of various companies, according to the order of official distribution, they came forward in turn and introduced the company's core products. The first to go on stage, it was Hammer Industries. 5 years ago, they relied on this conference to amaze the world, to become the supplier of the military. And this time, on the other hand, they brought the latest product they had prepared for a long time. Rattlesnake Missile. This rattlesnake missile was really tiny. It's about the length of a pen. But the power was extremely shocking. In the demonstration video, after the rattlesnake missile was fired, it quickly drilled into a building. Immediately after, flames spewed out, and the wall crumbled. The scene changed, and the dummy in the building exploded into pieces. The effect was very shocking. The eyes of the military personnel below could not help but light up. Justin Hammer saw this, and a smile appeared on his face. It seems that this time, it is already stable. However, very quickly, his smile froze on his face. Because he found out that the following product released by the other company, each one was more shocking than the last. Umbrella Corporation launched the human body strengthening drug. After the injection, it could stimulate the human body's potential quickly. It allowed his physical strength and strength to double. Of course, the side effects were also very obvious. After the injection, people usually need several months to recover. Some side effects may even harm the organs in the body. Its grade is lower than the super soldier serum. However, it still attracted quite a bit of attention. And another star company, the Osborn Industries. They launched a flying skateboard that goes in a set with its power armor. This caused many people to be greatly shocked. One had to know. Osborn Industries usually focuses on biological research. Unexpectedly, this time, for the sake of the military, for their share of meat, they changed their strategy and released these two military products. According to the video, the flying skateboard could carry the weight of an adult. A long-distance flight would take at least an hour. As for the power armor, it could cover the entire human body. Immunity from bullets. The combination of the two will boost each other to a greater effect. Then the next company comes to the stage. Cries of surprise erupted from the audience. However, when Tony went on stage, this exclamation reached a climax. Because this time, Tony himself came to the stage. He brought many products onto the stage. Among them, the most famous one was. It was the strongest weapon that Stark Industry had developed, Jericho missile. On the screen behind him was a recording of Jericho missile test. Boom. 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 A silver-white Jericho missile was seen on the screen, taking off after a rapid ignition. After the missile soared into the sky, the warhead split apart, and smaller warheads flew out, then started a second ignition. A large number of warheads flew out. In a short while, the entire mountain top was flattened. It was full of power, and it was terrific. After looking at the video screen behind him, Tony proudly turned around. Some of the military representatives below immediately applauded. Unexpectedly, this seems to be something from Stark Industries, which is the most appropriate for their level. Not bad indeed. Even the picky General Ross couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. Although he is more in love with super soldiers like Captain America. But in terms of long-range attacks, the performance of the Jericho missile was highly remarkable. It is a weapon worthy of military purchase. The bulk of the weapon purchased today should belong to Stark Industry. General Ross said in his heart. The faces of Norman Osborn and Justin Hammer behind them were not very good looking. This Tony's Jericho missile had completely stolen their spotlight. It seems that this year, they can only have a small share of the meat. After introducing Jericho missiles, Tony seemed to be not satisfied yet. He also revealed that he was recently researching a new energy source. Once he succeeded, he would overturn the current energy industry. The moment this was said, the expressions of the oil giants changed. No one thought that Tony would joke like this. Chapter 7, Product Beyond the Time, Humar. You have to know. Tony, this guy, although his character is not so good. But when it comes to intelligence and wisdom, everyone present thinks that they are not even a match for him. Does this guy want to enter the energy industry? For a moment, the people at the scene discussed. As Tony stepped down from the stage, the people below seemed to be somewhat gloomy. After all, in their opinion, after Tony spoke, there was nothing left to see at this science and technology summit. Because the ones behind them were just stinky fish and rotten shrimps. They did not have the qualifications to catch their attention at all. All right, everyone. Thank you for your speech, President Tony Stark. Then next, let us invite the President of Hiden Intelligence, Mr. Levi, to the stage to introduce the latest technological achievements of their company. The host said in a clear voice. Oh. It's the Hiden Intelligence who was in the limelight a few years ago. I didn't expect it to also appear in this gathering. It seems that the standard is a bit too low. I want to see what this kid can do after holding it in for a year. In the shadows, several figures sneered. They were the giants who had joined hands to block Hiden Intelligence. In their opinion, for the past year, Hiden Intelligence had indeed calmed down quite a bit. They had not released any new products. But who would have thought? They were invited to participate in this science and technology summit this time. They wanted to see what kind of tricks this kid could play. He seemed to have felt those ridiculing gazes. Levi smiled coldly. Without hesitation, he stood up, raised his chin, and walked forward. At this moment, Tony just happened to walk down from the platform. There was a hint of doubt in his eyes. At this moment, he was still uncertain. The one who had attacked Jarvis just now, was it this guy in front of him? The two of them came face to face in the aisle just like that. Tony, how did you feel just now? Levi said in a low voice as he walked. It really is you. When Tony heard this, his gaze suddenly became startled. Relax, I was just joking with you just now. Don't you want to know what kind of products we have? Go back to your seat, and you will see it. Levi lowered his head, smiled, and whispered in Tony's ear. But remember, next time, don't break into other people's databases. Otherwise, you won't be as lucky as this time. Levi raised his hand and patted Tony on the shoulder as he spoke. After that, he continued walking forward. On the other hand, Tony was stunned for a moment. Only then did he react. It really is him. Damn it. When I return, I will definitely teach him a lesson. Tony cursed angrily in his heart. However, the surrounding people did not see Tony's ashen complexion. They thought that the two of them were old acquaintances. This kid is good. He has a good relationship with Tony. General Ross couldn't help but nod and praise after seeing this scene. A moment later, Levi arrived at the platform center. He raised his head and glanced at Izu, who was sitting below. Izu immediately understood. His blue eyes flashed, and she immediately hacked into the network of the conference hall. The screen behind him immediately turned on. All right, everyone. Are you ready to welcome the arrival of a new era? Levi opened his hands and smiled mysteriously. Hiden Intelligence. We brought it for you today. It is a groundbreaking product. As he spoke, the big screen behind him began broadcasting the promotional video. The screen suddenly darkened. Then, it gradually lit up. A robot is sitting on a chair. At this moment, it looked motionless. And just then, the off-picture voice rang out. The artificial intelligence technology of the new era has made your future look brand new. Just as he finished speaking, the robot on the chair suddenly opened his eyes. Then, from the screen, a figure walked over. I call this robot equipped with artificial intelligence, Humar. We use a technique called thing cognition to allow him to have his own consciousness. And make him think and react for himself. The man turned his head and stretched out his right hand. Good morning. The scene immediately switched to the perspective of the humanoid robot. He scanned it lightly. Then, he raised his hand. Good morning, President Levi. Then, the external voice sounded again. After several years of continuous research, Hiden Intelligence finally grasped the full set of technology about the self-conscious robot half a year ago. Moreover, in this half year, it has been constantly optimized and improved. The Humar, controlled by the communication satellite Zia, is already capable of taking on various jobs. Chapter 8, Advanced Technology of the Humar. At this time, the scene changed. On the screen, the Humar began to try all kinds of work. Initially, their movements were a little shaky. However, after studying for a certain amount of time, their actions were becoming more and more perfect. It was hard to tell whether it was a human or a robot. Immediately after, the screen changed continuously. The various professions of the Humar were continuously displayed. Nanny, doctor, teacher, bodyguards. The Humar could perfectly do these jobs. They will rescue the human race from the complicated work. Immediately after, the scene changed again. The originally dark place had completely lit up. Levi stood side by side with the Humar. Let's fly together. Spread your wings towards your dreams. In the end, a large Hiden Intelligence logo appears. The promotional video ended here. The screen turned off, and everyone present could not help but be stunned after seeing this scene. The entire stadium seemed to have been muted. There was no sound for a long time. Everyone opened their mouths wide. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. After a long time, someone finally spoke. Impossible. This is an AI robot. Did he really succeed? This is too incredible. It must be fake. The design of this technology is too complicated. Hiden Intelligence's company can't make it. The entire conference hall was instantly boiling with excitement. And among them, the ones who were the most shocked were the higher UPS of the big financial groups. They had not expected this. Hiden Intelligence, if you don't show up, it won't be as messed up as this. The moment he appeared, it all exploded into big messy stuff. Be informed. It's not like they haven't tried this AI robot market before. Every company present had tried the AI field. Stark Industry, there was Jarvis. Umbrella Corporation, there was an artificial intelligence Red Queen. Even the Osborne Industries had their own primary AI. It was not unusual to create an AI. And to put it into a mechanical body. It would be difficult for it to simulate human behavior. It was not that they had not tried it before. But without exception, they all failed. Once. Stark Industry had once invested a considerable amount of resources. He wanted to design an intelligent machine. But in the end, it still failed. Even Stark Industry was unable to succeed. The other parties did not need to try. But now, such technology was achieved in the hands of a company that had just been established for 3 years. Immediately, someone looked at Tony. At this moment, Tony was, like everyone else, extremely shocked. He did not expect this. This Hiden Intelligence's latest product was an AI robot. 5 or 6 years ago. He had also tried it before. But at that time, technology was not very mature. Whether it was the energy needed by robots or the AI level at the time, it was impossible to imitate it completely. Therefore, he had to give up. He had initially thought that it would take several years for him to create a realistic AI robot entirely. Unexpectedly, this Hiden Intelligence had completed it without a buzz. As you can see, this Humar is our company's latest product. At present, there are 6 kinds of life forms. By inserting the corresponding key, you can change your form. Levi saw everyone's shocked expressions and could not help but smile. Then, he began to introduce them. The screen behind him revealed the forms of the 6 types of Humar. These 6 types of Humar corresponded to the 6 most basic occupations. They could help people escape from trivial matters. However, just at this moment, a voice rang out. Sorry to disturb you. I want to ask. You're talking about this Humajir. Is there any sample completed Humajir that we could see? The one who spoke was no one else. It was Hammer Industries CEO, Justin Hammer. He stood up and spread his hands. He asked innocently. However, the implication of its words. It was a little heartbreaking. What he meant was that this Leeway might only have a PPT. And there was no real product. One must know. This kind of thing was not impossible. Previously, there had been a ghostwriter who held a well-made PPT. He went to Wall Street to fool around. Someone invested a large sum of money for him. And then, he went away like a ghost. After that fellow rolled up the money, he disappeared without a trace. This matter had deeply affected the giants present. Generally speaking, anyone who could be invited to this kind of technological summit would not fake it. After all, everyone was a giant company. Reputation was more important than anything else. But Hiden Intelligence was different. It had only been established for 3 years. In order to gain fame, there was nothing that could not be done. For a time, the people present could not help but discuss among themselves. They began to doubt the authenticity of that Humajir. That's right. I knew it. How can this technology be achieved in one move? This company must be faker. Among them, the ones who shouted the loudest were undoubtedly the giants who had banned Hiden Intelligence. They did not want to give a face to Hiden Intelligence. This Hiden Intelligence could counterattack desperately. This sound was getting louder and louder. Even General Ross couldn't help but frown. If this Hiden Intelligence dared to fake this technological summit, he would immediately let him know the price of cheating. Only Tony believed Li Wei's words, without a doubt. After all, to be able to seal off Jarvis, he couldn't be an ordinary swindler. Seeing his compelling words, Justin Hammer couldn't help but be interested. Who knew that Li Wei was not angry in the face of difficulties? Instead, he smiled. It is evident that he already had a solution to this problem. On the stage, Li Wei faced the doubts of the people below. However, he was not angry. He only smiled and stood quietly on the stage. Is that so? Who said that there are no real samples of the Humajir? There are 2 of them in this venue. You can look for them. Let's see if you guys can discover their existence. He waited for the voices below to calm down a little. Li Wei raised his hand and said indifferently. What? Humajir is in the venue. How is this possible? The people below could not help but look at each other. They turned their heads and looked around. They were trying to find traces of Humajir. However, no matter how hard they tried, they could not find any traces of the existence of machines at the scene. President Li Wei. I'm afraid you're making a fool of yourself. Chapter 9, The Clowning. If you have the guts, let your so-called Humajir show themselves now. I want to see if it is as magical as you say. And at this time, Justin Hammer said in a strange tone. When he heard this, Li Wei was not angry. Instead, he smiled faintly. Immediately, he snapped his fingers. Since that's the case, then as you wish. Aizu, release the occupation keys of those 2 Humajirs. Li Wei touched the encrypted device beside his ear and said. Okay. President. Aizu sat in her seat and immediately nodded her cute little head. Then, she entered Satellite Zia's internal network. She controlled the internal network. At this moment, in the conference hall, the 2 security guards next to him instantly had an abnormal change. Ka. Their bodies started to twist and turn. Their eyes also started to turn red. Immediately after. Bang. Their clothes exploded. In a flash, they transformed into Humajir's original form. Immediately after, 2 Humajir walked up to the stage side by side. Then, everyone, as you can see, the person standing next to me is Humajir. Li Wei said indifferently. Half a year ago, he had already broken through all the obstacles in creating Humajir. They had already been prepared, whether it was the core power source or the data code inside. However, at that time, there were still flaws in Humajir. He needed to debug them continuously. Thus, he created hundreds of active Humajir. He threw them into society. While debugging, he collected live data. In the end, the final version was created. As for the 2 security personnel, they were already sent to the city half a year ago. Until now. Only now, Li Wei reawakened them. This. I didn't expect it to be true. Hiden Intelligence, as expected, has developed an intelligent robot. Damn it. Humajir. Is the era of AI robots coming? When the people below saw this scene, they could not help but exclaim once again. Tony also suddenly stood up from his seat. His eyes were fixed on the two Humajir. His eyes flashed, and it was unknown what he was thinking in his mind. Justin Hammer, who had initially voiced his doubts, could not help but be speechless at this moment. Unexpectedly, this fellow had planted the Humajir in the venue. He was really cunning. Then, as you can see, this is the Humajir produced by my company. Since President Hammer is questioning the authenticity of this Humajir, then why don't we go up on stage and experience it ourselves? Li Wei said with a faint smile. For a moment, everyone looked toward Justin Hammer. Me? Justin Hammer pointed at himself, a little surprised. However, right now, he was also walking on an eggshell. Who asked him to be the first to open his mouth? Thinking of this, Justin Hammer could only squeeze a smile on his face. Then, he braced himself and walked up to the stage. Then everyone. Currently, our company has launched a total of 6 basic forms of Humajir. Just now, it was the security type Humajir. Now, let's try this doctor type Humajir. As he spoke, Li Wei took out a key. It was a small box that looked like a magnet. To allow Humajir to deal with different scenarios, we have created a professional key for it. He gently tapped the secret key in his hand and continued to introduce it. Let's talk about it with a medical key. A large amount of medical data is sealed inside. Once it is activated, it can make Humajir become the most professional medical attendee. As he spoke, Li Wei took the key and swept it towards Humajir's ear. That was where Humajir was connected. He could receive information from the outside. Ding, the doctor's data is connected. Dr. Humajir, activate now. Along with a burst of activation sound, light surged on Humajir's body. In a flash, it transformed into a female doctor in a white robe. This operation immediately made the people below gasp in surprise. Is this a three-dimensional imaging technique? Tony looked at the scene in front of him and frowned. He did not think of it. Any one of Li Wei's moves could contain such technology. And at this time, Dr. Humajir opened his eyes. After scanning around, he quickly confirmed Li Wei's identity. President Li Wei, what is it? Do you need me to handle it? The doctor, Humajir, said gently. Please do a medical checkup on President Hammer. Li Wei said indifferently. There isn't much of a problem with my body. Justin Hammer, who was at the side, couldn't help but speak confidently. As for the physician, Humajir, who was at the side, he just ignored Justin Hammer's words. Instead, he directly started scanning him. With respect, Mr. Justin Hammer. Scanning. A total of 12 small lesions have been found on your body. Among them, the most serious is your kidney deficiency. It is recommended that you reduce the number of. Otherwise, it is serious and can lead to many problems. I suggest that you buy the pill. The Dr. Humajir said seriously. When the people below heard this, they were stunned. Then, they burst into laughter. You? Me? Even with the cheekiness of Justin Hammer. After hearing Dr. Humajir's suggestion, he couldn't help but turn red with anger. He gave Li Wei a fierce look. Immediately. Then, he flicked his sleeves and left. He acted in such a manner. It was as if he had verified the words of the physician Humajir. He looked at Justin Hammer's back. Li Wei smiled coldly. Since this guy wanted to be a clown, then, he would help him to the end. Chapter 10, Treading the Path of ZAIA. It looks like President Hammer can't wait any longer and will treat his illness soon. Li Wei teased again. Immediately, another burst of cheerful laughter. When Justin Hammer heard this, he almost stumbled and fell to the ground. Damn it! I will definitely make you pay for this. Justin Hammer cursed. But beneath his feet, he did not dare to hesitate in the slightest. He left the venue as if he was fleeing. Li Wei's eyes were filled with mockery while seeing the clown-like Hammer. Then, he withdrew his gaze and continued to look at Humajir beside him. Then as you can see, the Humajir we sent out is real. In the future, we will put the 6 types of life-type Humajir on the official website. If you need it, You can purchase them directly from our website. Li Wei glanced at everyone present and said. Alright. The above results from my efforts in the past year. Thank you for listening. After saying that, he bowed to the audience. The two Humajir behind him also bent down. There was a moment of silence. Obviously, there were still some people at the scene who did not want this to happen. However, a figure took the lead to stand up and slowly clap. That figure was General Ross. And following General Ross' applause, the people in the rear also raised their hands. A round of applause could be heard across the room. After all, no matter how much they did not approve of it, this Humajir was still a groundbreaking invention. Crash! This science and technology summit came to an end in this not-so-warm applause. Everyone stood up one after another. Those who had the mind to work had already prepared to return to work to discuss countermeasures. After all, anyone could see the potential of this Humajir. A new racetrack was about to start. They wanted to see if they could get a share of this feast. And Li Wei. He also slowly walked down from the stage. However, at this moment, someone blocked his path. It was a young man in military uniform. He looked very clever. At first glance, he was no ordinary person. Li Wei raised his eyes to look. He felt that his face was familiar. For a moment, he couldn't remember. After thinking for a moment, only then did he remember that this was the loathsome evil in front of him. According to the settings in the movie, it should be called Emil Blonsky. However, the current him had not been injected with the medicine yet. Naturally, he had not transformed into the abomination yet. Mr. Li Wei, General Ross would like to have a private interview with you regarding some matters. Can you follow me to the back? Blonsky asked. When Li Wei heard this, he smiled faintly in his heart. Looks like the hook is finally in. That's right. The purpose of Li Wei coming to the Summit of Science and Technology this time. It was not as simple as just releasing Humajir. Be aware. It could have been released a few months ago if he wanted to release it. Why did he have to wait until this summit to announce it? One of the reasons was naturally to let the other companies see their power. And the other reason? It was to attract the attention of the military and government. Actually, apart from this civilian version, Li Wei also developed another set of Humajir. He called it Government Special Edition. Or, it could be called the military version of Humajir. The civil market was very vast. However, it would take a long time to pave the way. Take the Humajir he made as an example. The manufacturing cost was very high. An average family would not be able to afford it. He wanted to suppress the manufacturing price of Humajir. A large number of orders would be needed. And it would be best if it was a single model. As for military Humajir, they perfectly met this standard. Therefore, we want to make Humajir popular as soon as possible. Producing military versions was the best choice. This point. In fact, you can see the clue by referring to the two companies in the original book, Hiden and ZAIA. Hiden Intelligence in the original book has been in a state of failure since the death of the old president. After that, he fell to the end of being purchased by ZAIA. On the other hand, ZAIA was different. They have branches not only in Japan but all over the world. The scale was enormous. If they only relied on the civilian market, it would be impossible to expand so quickly. Therefore, ZAIA company chose to combine technology with military prowess. They developed many powerful weapons, one after another. Li Wei inherited the existence of both the Hiden Intelligence and ZAIA simultaneously. In fact, Li Wei leans more towards ZAIA's philosophy. Moreover, this was the Marvel Universe. It was even more dangerous than Kamen Rider Universe. In the future, the Chitauri Legion under Thanos would descend. So, he didn't have time to develop slowly. He had to make preparations early. This military Humajir was his first plan. Aizu, are all the things ready? Li Wei first turned around and looked at Aizu. He saw that Aizu had appeared beside him at some point in time. In his hand was a silver box. It's ready, President. She nodded obediently and replied. Since that's the case, please lead the way. Li Wei said with a faint smile. The contact between the two of them was very secretive. But some people still see it. As frequent visitors to the military, they naturally recognized the identity of Blonsky. As the general's subordinate, Blonsky invited Levi to meet him privately. What did it mean? It goes without saying. And among them, the most uncomfortable one was Norman Osborn. Initially, he was prepared to make a name for himself in this summit. Unexpectedly, however, he was continuously defeated by Tony and Levi. And now, this Levi was even invited privately by General Ross. This made Norman Osborn's face look gloomy and uncertain. Not long after, the two of them left for the conference room. This was the conference room that the hotel had specially set up for the higher UPS of the government. Dong. After Blonsky knocked on the door, he made a gesture of invitation. Levi, together with Izu, went into the room. Chapter 11, Military-type Humajir. Inside of the room, General Ross, Chief George, and the governor were sitting there. They were drinking whiskey and chatting happily. When they saw Levi, they smiled at each other. "Come in and sit down." As General Ross spoke, he lit up a cigar. Seeing this, Levi did not say anything. He immediately found an empty seat and sat down. He wasn't influenced by the aura of General Ross and the others at all. They even seemed to be on par with each other. This neither humble nor arrogant attitude made the three present involuntarily feel amazed. Looks like the president of Hiden Intelligence was really different from the people in charge of the consortium they had met in the past. "Do you know why I asked you to come here?" General Ross was the first to break the silence while smoking a cigar. "Of course." Levi sat on the chair and smiled confidently and calmly. "Oh, is that so?" General Ross put down the cigar in his hand and said with interest. "Tell me in detail." However, in the face of General Ross' question, Levi did not answer directly. He turned his head, looked at Izu beside him, and directly snapped his fingers. Izu immediately understood. He saw that Izu's eyes flashed with blue light. The entire room instantly turned dark. Immediately after, he spread out his right hand. Light surged from his palm. All of a sudden, the entire room seemed to turn into a virtual screen. This scene immediately shocked the three people present once again. Unexpectedly, Hiden Intelligence technology had reached such a level. In the dark room, a virtual promotional video began to play. Compared to the previous promotional video, this set of promotional videos seemed to be much more radical and cruel. It shows a relatively cruel scene. For example, the police shuttled through the streets but were killed by the gangsters with guns. Blood splattered everywhere. This scene seemed to be happening right in front of their eyes. Another example. The firefighters rushed into a fire and wanted to rescue the trapped people. However, they did not expect that they could not save the people. The firefighter was trapped in the sea of fire. The fire burned. As they screamed, it seemed to linger in their eardrums. Another example. On the battlefield, soldiers were moving through it. And at this time, in the sky, the bomber suddenly flew over. An artillery shell fell, and his body was brutally blown to pieces. These scenes, after being rendered by the virtual image, it felt real. Among the three people present, General Ross shows no signs of surprise. Meanwhile, the body of the remaining two people trembled. In the end, these scenes all turned grey. Immediately after, these grey images were directly torn apart. A Humajir jumped out. Compared to the previous civil version, this Humajir seemed to be more ferocious. Its eyes were crimson red. It looked very ferocious. But it was full of intimidation. And at this moment, the room was restored to light. The virtual Humajir was still in front of everyone. It was only at this moment that Li Wei spoke slowly. "As you can see, be it in the city or on the battlefield, every year, countless people sacrifice themselves for the country. Then, is there a way to avoid this situation? The answer is obvious. In order to deal with this situation, we specially developed a Humajir to be specially used by the government." The version of Humajir, accompanied by Levi's words, began to rotate and display. It is based on different needs. It can also be divided into three types. They are the police version, military version, and firefighter version. The Humajir that appeared in the display was immediately divided into three types. Three different forms appeared. Each form had different colors. Izu began to introduce the characteristics of the three different forms. She first walked to the side of the blue Humajir and raised her hand. This is the basic model of the three models. Police version Humajir. Height, 1.9 m, weight, 120 kg. Sprint, 28-32 km per hour. Arm strength, 62 kg. Controlled by satellite. 1 hour of charging. 1 month of continuous work. The red one next to it is the firefighter. It is made of materials that can withstand high temperatures. It is sturdy and durable. And the green one on the other side is the military models. It is more flexible than the police. The performance is also better, but the price is a bit more expensive than the other two. Next, Isa focused on introducing the benefits of these three models of Humar. Moreover, he compared them to humans. Compared to humans. The first advantage of this special version of Humar was that it would not feel tired. Everyone knew. Humans had their limits. Whether it was physical strength or endurance, there was a limit. Once it exceeds the limit, one would feel tired. At that time, the chances of them making mistakes would increase exponentially. And machines did not have this kind of situation. As long as it is maintained regularly, and had an adequate supply of energy, it will be able to function to its full potential. And then, second, even if it is damaged, there is no need to worry. If the core parts were not damaged, the damaged part could be directly replaced and modified. The cost of the repair was very cheap. Humans, on the other hand, if they got broken arms and legs, most of the time, they can no longer perform to their fullest. In short, compared to humans, these Humar had significant advantages. General Ross and the other two couldn't help but be lost in thought when they heard this. They nodded repeatedly. After the introduction was completed, the three of them still looked like they were not satisfied. Then, all of them turned around and started to discuss. On the other hand, Levi patiently sat on the chair and waited for their discussion. Not long after, they turned around. A hint of a smile appeared on General Ross' face. Not a bad product. Then, what is their price? Levi smiled faintly. Then, he handed out a document report to General Ross. General Ross and the other two took it and casually flipped through a few pages. Chapter 12, The Establishment of AIMS. I like your idea. General Ross narrowed his eyes and nodded. However, there is still a problem. Your military Humar haven't conducted a large-scale test. We know nothing of its actual performance. I still have some doubts. Moreover, the Ministry of Defense won't agree to us purchasing this batch of equipment. General Ross put down the document and said solemnly. In fact, if the military wanted to purchase equipment, they had to get approval from the Ministry of Defense. Normally, the Ministry of Defense would not refuse the orders requested by the military. But Humar was different. It was different from ordinary weapons and firearms. It was a brand new type of war equipment. Moreover, the price is really expensive. If the quality was not field tested, the Ministry of Defense would naturally not agree so easily. When Levi heard this, he smiled faintly. He did not speak directly to explain anything. After all, General Ross, since you said such words, it wouldn't be as simple as just refusing. Ha ha ha. As expected, you can keep your cool. General Ross and Chief George looked at each other once more before bursting into laughter. Come and introduce him to me. General Ross turned around and said to Chief George. Chief George nodded and began to explain. We just discussed it. Since these three versions of Humar belong to the same version, then we can first use this police version of Humar to test it. How to test it? Levi was a little curious about this. Recently, New York has been a little restless. Gang members, underground drug lords, street robbers. New York's police force job is getting harder and harder to keep them at bay. In that case, then I will use Humar to form a special force. We will deal with the police's shortage this way. Chief George said slowly. This force will fully consist of Humar. We won't interfere too much with their situation. At most, we'll just send people to carry out some administrative work. He added. No problem. Levi nodded and accepted the test. 1 month. General Ross raised a finger. I only give you 1 month. I want to see results in 1 month. If the performance of police Humar meets my expectations, then our military will make a large-scale purchase. We could even use it in Iraq. As everyone knew, ever since the start of the Iraq War, the US had been in deep trouble. Every year, many soldiers of the US lost their lives here. The compensation fee was a huge expense. It would be great if the soldier could be replaced by Humar. And this would be a huge order by the military. It would be enough for Hiden Intelligence to soar into the sky. It's a deal. Levi smiled faintly after listening to the two. Very good. Since that's the case, then I'll leave this experimental unit to you to name. General Ross laughed. In that case, why don't we call it A.I.M.S? A.I.M.S. The full name is Artificial Intelligence Military Service. It was originally an organization of Kamen Rider 01. It was a department specially set up by the government to prevent AI from committing crimes. In the original work, it was the place where the second and third rider of Kamen Rider 01 works. And now, it was about to become the name of New York's AI police force, a Humar's force. It had to be said. It was really interesting. Thinking of this, the corners of Levi's mouth could not help but curve into a smile. All right. Let's stop the business talk here. After talking for half a day, I believe that you are also tired. I will send someone to meet you tomorrow. Chief George stood up and patted Levi on the shoulder as he encouraged him. It was obvious that he was going to send the guest off. Then I won't disturb you. Levi nodded and immediately got up. He turned around and walked out the door. President. Are you really going to cooperate with the police? On the road. The sports car was driving quickly. The driver's seat was empty. The AI navigation system was automatically driving, drawing the best route for the car. In the back of the car, Izu looked at Levi beside him and could not help but ask curiously. Of course. Levi propped up his chin with one hand. He looked out of the window and said confidently. Dozens of minutes later, the car arrived at the downstairs of Hiden Intelligence's headquarters. This Hiden Intelligence was located in the north of New York. There were many tech companies around it. Although its appearance was not as gorgeous as Stark's building. However, it was not looking shabby compared to the surrounding buildings. At this moment, under the night sky, the headquarters was still brightly lit. Many employees were still busy. Everyone seemed to be full of energy. The sports car automatically stopped in the garage. As for Levi, he led Izu into the Hiden Intelligence headquarters. The sports car automatically stopped in the garage. Levi, on the other hand, led Izu into the headquarters of the Hiden Intelligence. Hello, President. Good evening, President. Walking among them, all the employees saw Levi and immediately nodded. There was a hint of worship in everyone's eyes. One had to know. Many of the people in Hiden Intelligence admired Levi. Most of them joined Hiden Intelligence due to their admiration of Levi. Moreover, many of them graduated from Harvard and Yale. From this, it could be seen. Levi was very popular among young people. Facing these employees, Levi also smiled and nodded. His smile was like a spring breeze. A moment later, he then boarded the elevator that belonged to the president. Buzz. The elevator closed. However, to everyone's surprise, the entire elevator did not have any buttons. Chapter 13, Satellite Arc, activated. Good day, President, which floor do you want to go to this time? Izu, who was at the side, blinked her cute eyes and asked. She was the intelligence center of the entire Hiden Intelligence headquarters. Therefore, there was no need to place any buttons in this elevator. Go to the -6 floor. Levi instructed. Yes, President. Izu nodded and the entire elevator descended steadily. In fact, in this Hiden Intelligence headquarter, Levi had two offices. One was on the top floor of the Hiden Intelligence headquarters. There, he would deal with all kinds of things about Hiden Intelligence, including the difficult problems in research and development, as well as the various decisions made by the company. And the other office, it was placed at the -6 level. In fact, even among Hiden Intelligence staff, very few people knew about it. There were actually several basement levels under Hiden Intelligence headquarters. All along, they had only worked on the ground. As for the underground, it was viewed as a restricted area. Even if there were very few people who went down. After coming up, they kept their mouths shut and did not mention this matter. Moreover, even if they went down, they had only been to the first and second floors of the basement. No one had seen what was down the third floor. Not to mention, they had never heard of it. Not to mention the 6th floor. In fact, When Hiden Intelligence headquarters built it back then, Levi had already planned it out. The floors on the surface of the headquarters were all used to deal with the project of Hiden Intelligence. And the underground floor, it was used to develop ZAIA's technology. Basically, all the products released by Hiden Intelligence were from the ground. On the basement, it was the product of ZAIA's technology. However, it was rarely released to the public. And the sixth underground floor, it was the core area of ZAIA's technology. The elevator slowly descended for a full minute. Only then did it come to a steady stop. Ding, you have reached the -6th floor. Information detection is correct. The door is about to open. The elevator door slowly opened. Levi stepped into the 6th underground floor. The entire 6th underground floor was shrouded in darkness. As Levi entered, several lights suddenly lit up. However, among them, the most dazzling one lit up from the ground. Look carefully. You can find it. The ground of the 6th floor was made of tempered glass. And under this tempered glass, it seemed to fill up with water. In the water, there was a huge device that looked like an evil eye that was emitting a light that belonged to it alone. That's right. This was Satellite Arc. Levi had inherited both the power of Hiden and ZAIA at the same time. Naturally, Levi would not only use Zia as a satellite. In fact, at that time, when the project started, Levi started the construction of 2 satellites at the same time. For this, even after spending countless resources, he did not hold himself. The first to be made, it was that satellite Zia. A year ago, it had already been launched into space. After that, it was used as the core terminal of the Humar. It was responsible for processing their data information. Some important documents were also stored inside the satellite's database. As for Satellite Arc, half a year after Zia is launched, it was finally completed. However, after it was created, it had been hidden underground. It could not see the light of day. Basically, no one else knew. Speaking of which, in terms of manufacturing difficulty, Satellite Arc is better than Zia. One must know that Satellite Zia was only designed by Hiden Intelligence. Its core was not complicated. Thus, it was relatively simple to create. But Satellite Arc, it wasn't that simple. Back then, it was jointly developed by Hiden Intelligence, ZAIA Technology, and more than a dozen giants. It was developed together by those big shots of 01 Universe. It was ready to be the top brain of Daybreak Town. The core technology could be said to be immeasurable. Therefore, it was created half a year after Satellite Zia. Levi stood on the tempered glass. Looking at the constantly flashing Satellite Arc below, the corners of his mouth could not help but curve into a smile. Then now, we can activate the malice plan now. He lifted his right hand and gently gave a signal. As you command, President. Arc suddenly let out an ear-piercing sound. It seemed to be responding to Levi's instructions. Then, what was malice plan? One had to know. In the original work, the reason why this Satellite Arc was so powerful was that it absorbed the malice of humans. As the saying goes, blackening something makes it 10 times stronger and whitening something makes it 3 times weaker. The Humar and sublimating secret key were created by Satellite Arc. All of them were extremely powerful existences. And Satellite Zia is weaker than Arc. Compared to those weak Humar, Levi preferred to take some powerful existences. However, if he wanted to create those powerful Humar, one thing was needed. That was malice. These years, he had also gone through some research. It wasn't easy to absorb malice. In fact, everyone had malicious intent in their hearts. It was just a question of how much. The more vicious an existence was, the more malicious they would be. However, those malicious intents would normally be hidden in the depths of their hearts. It was impossible to capture them all. Only when they died, the malice in their heart completely burst out. Jealousy, anger, fear, greed, longing. The malice collected in this way would be hundreds of times more powerful than the ordinary. So, originally, it was Levi's plan. It was to install Malice Collector on the military Humar. This way, in the war, they are absorbing malicious intent. Then, he sent these malices to Satellite Arc. He wanted to use these malice to create a stronger Humar and upgrade the key for himself. But now, Since this General Ross wanted to inspect the goods first, he had to make use of these malice. That was as he wished. After all, gang members, underground drug lords, terrorists. These people. They were all good nourishment for absorbing malicious energy. Since that was the case, then he would not let go of such a good opportunity. Then Satellite Arc. Start manufacturing 100 military Humajir. As you command, President. Satellite Arc immediately replied. Immediately. It activated the projection function. There was a buzzing sound. The entire dark underground 6th floor became bright. Light and shadow appeared. The second basement level was projected onto it. The second underground floor. It was the manufacturing area for military Humajir. In fact, the entire Hiden Intelligence also had 2 manufacturing factories. One was on the higher level floors for the daily life Humajir manufacturing base. The second manufacturer. It was the military Humajir manufacturing center buried underground. Each of the 2 manufacturing centers had a satellite control. It was different from the daily life Humajir manufacturing base. It still needed to be manually assembled. The military Humajir manufacturing center on the 2nd floor was completely automatic. All the processes were controlled by Satellite Arc. Bang bang! All kinds of parts were manufactured and printed. Arms. Torso. Legs. This mechanical limb was continuously manufactured and then assembled. The entire manufacturing process was gorgeous and precise. It was as if they are conducting an art performance. Dozens of minutes later, 100 Humajirs had been constructed. Then they were arranged into a few rows. Chapter 14, Sculpting the Familiar Face. Then after that, this is the face sculpting session. Izu, who was at the side, seemed a little excited. This was the segment that she liked the most. Then, what was the face sculpting segment? In fact, these Humajir, when they were created, they looked rough. On the outside, they still looked like a robot. So, to make them get along with humans better. At that time, President Hiden Intelligence helped develop appearance simulation systems. Through laser cutting technology, it could make Humajir's appearance look like a real human. This was the face sculpting segment. Under normal circumstances, the system would automatically generate all kinds of templates. It would then be given to Humajir's body. But Levi's time is expensive, but he liked to sculpt the Humajir face. He shaped some of the Humajir into what he liked. Then next, whose face should I sculpt first? At this moment, Levi was already sitting on a leather sofa. He crossed his legs and folded his fingers together. Then, let's make a copy of this face first. Levi seemed to have thought of something. The encryption device beside his ear instantly read his thoughts. A 3-dimensional face immediately appeared in Satellite Arc's database. As you command, President. Immediately, Humajir, who was at the front, was sent to the workshop. The ceiling above the workshop opened. Then, it shot out 2 laser guns. It is aimed at the Humajir and started to shoot. Pew! 2 blue lights shot out from the guns. Zing zing zing! Along with this ear-piercing sound, that Humajir, starting from the bottom, gradually changed into the appearance of a human. Skin. Even the blood vessels beneath the skin were clearly visible. First, the foot. Then, the hand. Finally, a human male face appeared on Humajir's head. This face was none other than someone we were all familiar with. It was precisely the second rider of Kamen Rider 01. Isamu Fuwa, the one who is known to always break a progress ikis before transforming. That's right. That is the face that Levi sculpted. Let's hope he's not breaking anything later on. This guy, in the original work, was a member of AIMS. Unexpectedly, after arriving in the world of the United States, he still could not escape the fate of becoming a police officer. Perfect. Levi carefully stared at that face for a moment. It looks the same as the Isamu Fuwa in his memory. Only then did he nod in satisfaction. Alright, let's continue with the next one. Levi snapped his fingers and continued. It was the same process as before. However, this time, what was created was a woman. A slender thigh. A pretty face. She had long black hair and a tall figure. She had the image of a mature lady. Needless to say, the second one to be created was the 3 knights in the original work, Yuayaiba. Very good. Looking at the projection of the two people in front of him, Levi nodded with satisfaction. The reason why he wanted to create these two people was that he wanted to satisfy his little hobby. Other than satisfying his little hobby, it was also to prepare for the future. After that, set it up as you please. Levi waved his hand and ordered. Yes. Satellite Arc started to set it up himself. Compared to Isamu Fuwa and Yuayaiba, the Humajir on the back was not as exquisite. Black, white, yellow. Everything was here. After everyone was done with the paint, this satellite arc had given them a special battle uniform set for ZAIA. This type of battle uniform could effectively protect Humajir, to prevent them from suffering unnecessary damage. This way, only then could the 100 military Humajir be considered complete. The entire process took about 2 hours. 100 Humajir, completed. Do you want to activate them? Satellite Arc's cold voice sounded. Activate them. Inject them into the program we developed before. Levi sat on the sofa and said indifferently. Yes, sir. Clang clang. Along with the injection of the program, the 100 Humajir are gradually activated. Their lowered heads began to slowly lift up. Then, they suddenly opened his eyes. Buzz. Red light flashed. Instantly, the entire underground second floor was enveloped by this hazy red light. The entire scene looked gorgeous and strange. These Humajir were bathed in the red light. Each of their faces was cold. Their database was filled with all sorts of killing techniques. Each and every one of them was an extremely powerful existence. Levi looked at the Humajir soldiers standing in front of him and could not help but smile. Welcome to the real world. Levi raised his cup and looked at the projection in front of him. He laughed. Salute. Sir, yes sir. The 100 soldiers in front of him, Humajir, immediately raised their hands and showed their respect to Levi. One had to know. These Humajir, at the deepest of its core, had the most important code written. No matter what the situation was, they had to maintain absolute obedience towards Levi. In other words, no matter how much Humajir was produced, where would these Humajir loyalty placed in the end? This final control was always in his own hands. This was equivalent to using other people's money to create an army for himself. Why not? Chapter 15, Aftermath of the Conference. While Levi was creating his own Humajir army, in the outside world, already bustling with noise and excitement, the matter at the press conference had gradually spread. Although most of the people in the guild remained silent. After all, once this news was made public, it would be the same. The stock prices of the major companies would inevitably fall. However, the reporters would not care about this. They took the news that they were about to receive and sent it back to the news agency. Horn Daily News. In the office, the boss of the newspaper was still dealing with some things. However, at this moment, his phone rang. The boss of the newspaper picked up the phone. Boss. Big news. Big news. The reporter on the other side of the line said what he had seen tonight. The boss of the Daily Bugle heard this and his face glowed red. Okay. Artificial intelligence. Humajir. Boss of Hiden. It's a breaking news. Have you taken the photos? He hurriedly asked. I got it, but it's not very clear. Come back there and take the photo again, quickly. I want it on the front page of tomorrow's newspaper. The boss of the newspaper immediately waved his hand and said. And the news bosses who had not sent reporters to the scene. Hearing this news, it was too late to regret. They cried out in regret. Unexpectedly, they actually missed such an excellent opportunity. However, just as they were feeling vexed, a document suddenly popped up in their computer email. They opened the document curiously. When they saw the contents, they were all excited. So it was. Among them, it was the blackmail material that Izu stole from Stark Industry. Everyone looked at the blackmail material. Their eyes immediately lit up. They were just worried that there would be no news. Looks like we have the front page for tomorrow. The next morning, Ben Parker picked up the newspaper from the mailbox outside the house. Then he went into the house. Aunt May, who was in the house, served him a glass of milk and a few pieces of bread. And at this time, Peter Parker hurried out of the house. Not good. I'm going to be late. He picked up his bag, put on his coat, and rushed out. Get a few pieces of bread. Aunt May shouted. No need. Parker hurriedly ran out. This kid. This uncle jokingly scolded, and then looked at the newspaper in his hand. Oh, my God. Parker left home. Then, he hurriedly walked towards the public transportation station. Their school had organized an event today. They were going to a group of high-tech companies for a tour. Among them, he had his favorite, Hiden Intelligence. There is no way he could miss this. After he ran to the platform, the school bus was about to leave. Parker reacted quickly and immediately jumped into the car door. Phew, I almost missed it. Parker wiped his forehead and said in a relaxed tone. Hey, Parker, come here. Look at what I saw. And at this moment, a little fat Asian kid suddenly stood up. He waved at Parker. This little fatty was Parker's good friend, Ned Leeds. What's happening right now? Parker walked next to him, put down his bag, and asked with interest. Oh my God, you haven't seen the news yet. Hiden Intelligence, he gave birth to an AI intelligent machine. And it's said that it can completely imitate human beings and replace certain occupations of human beings. This is too crazy. The little fatty hurriedly took out his phone and showed it to Parker. Oh, my God. When Parker heard this news, he could not believe it. This Hiden Intelligence. Wasn't they really awesome? One must know. Ever since Hiden was born, Peter was Hiden Intelligence's loyal fan. For every electronic product that it produced, Parker would save up money to buy. It could be said that he was a die-hard Hiden fan. However, in the recent year, this Hiden Intelligence did not seem to have released a new product. This made Parker depressed for a long time. He thought that this Hiden company had exhausted all its tricks. Unexpectedly, this appearance brought about such a huge invention. Too amazing. Parker took the phone and read it carefully. Most of them were descriptions of the reporters. There were also photos taken at the press conference. Humagir. Artificial human technology. One by one, these terms washed out Parker's vision. This is too inconceivable. President Levi is simply a genius. After reading it, Parker once again praised him. That's right. Originally, I thought that Tony Stark was more talented. But now, I have changed my mind. From now on, my idol will be President Levi. The little fatty Ned nodded in agreement. Just in time. We're going to Hiden Intelligence's headquarters for a tour. I wonder if we can see the Humagir mentioned in the news. Parker said excitedly. But before that, we still have to visit Osborne's industry. That's true. Can't the school change the order? The little fatty Ned couldn't help but complain. Chapter 16, You Reap What You Sow, Tony vs Board Directors. On the other side, as the news festers, the stock prices of the various large companies dropped as expected. It fell. Among them, the one who suffered the most losses was none other than Stark Industry. In just one morning, Stark Industries' stock price had dropped by about 5%. Moreover, this decline still didn't show any sign of stopping. Don't underestimate this 10%. One had to know. This Stark Industry was a leviathan. Its value was immeasurable. Such a leviathan existence. If its share price dropped only 1% or 2%, it was enough to make the investors' hearts jump. Moreover, it was a 5% drop. This kind of crazy fall made Stark Industries shareholders feel heartache. And at this moment, in Tony's mansion, Pepper Potts rushed into the mansion. Tony! Tony! What the hell did you do yesterday? As soon as she entered, she held the folder in her hand and shouted. However, this voice echoed in the spacious hall. However, no one answered. Jarvis, where is Tony? Pepper raised his hand and covered his head. He could not help but sigh. If I am not wrong, this guy should have gone to a hotel with a beauty in his arms yesterday. However, this Jarvis actually did not respond to her. This made her a little surprised. One must know. As the electronic housekeeper of Tony's mansion, Jarvis should be online 24 hours a day. But now, it didn't answer her question. Could it be that something had happened? At this moment, a series of sounds suddenly came from below the mansion. Pepper picked up a baseball bat next to her. She walked down. When she reached the underground laboratory, Only then did she realize that it was Tony who made that sound. She saw that Tony seemed to be tinkering with something. He was surrounded by circuit boards and wires. It looked extremely messy. Tony. Little Chili put down the baseball bat in her hand and opened the door of the laboratory. Everyone on the board of directors is looking for you. But you are hiding here. She raised her hands and could not help but complain. Hey! Wait! There are countless plans in my mind right now. Don't disturb me. Tony raised his bloodshot eyes and said excitedly. Oh, my God! You didn't sleep all night, did you? Pepper said with some heartache. Tony nodded. You have to know. He hadn't closed his eyes since he came back last night. To save Jarvis from its sealed state. He had put in countless efforts. Although he did not fully succeed in the end. But he was finally able to reactivate Jarvis. He had activated a part of its function. To be able to do this already showed how terrifying Tony's IQ was. I don't know what to say to you. Pepper made a cup of coffee and handed it to Tony. But now, you should talk to the board of directors first. They are going crazy. Pepper tried to persuade him. All right. All right. But it can only last 10 minutes. I still have a lot of things to do. Jarvis, help me turn on the phone projection. Tony took a sip of the coffee in his hand and take a sip. But after waiting for a long time, Jarvis did not respond. After all, it had not been released by Izu's blockade. It was Pepper who had helped him manually turn on the switch for the projection conference. The surrounding lights quickly dimmed. Immediately after, a 3D projection appeared. The scenery around Tony changed. In an instant, it turned into a conference room. Tony. What happened yesterday? Why did so much of our company's internal information leak out? Do you have a conflict with Hiden Intelligence's president? Tony, you have to be responsible for this. That's right. I don't think the current you is suitable to be the president of Stark Industry. The conference projection had just started. The members of the board of directors on each seat immediately exploded. One had to know. In just a short morning, they had lost hundreds of millions of assets. He. Everyone, calm down, calm down. However, at this moment, at the front of the conference table, a bald man stood out. He raised his hands and stopped the noise of the crowd. He stopped the noise of the crowd. Hearing him speak, the members of the board of directors around them reluctantly stopped their argument. This guy was Stark Industries' higher UPS, Obadiah. His words still carried a certain weight. Tony, I was helping you to turn the situation around just now. But to be honest, the current situation is very unfavorable for us. Obadiah touched his bald head and said in a low voice. Hey! Everyone! Don't worry. However, right at this moment, Tony raised his hand, a conceited smile on his face. 10 days. Give me 10 days. He looked at the board of directors and shouted. In 10 days, I will bring out a product that is even better than Humar. Tony said confidently. All along, many of the company's products were developed by Tony himself. Therefore, everyone was very convinced by his design. Since he had already boasted, it was not good for them to force anything. Okay, Tony. We will give you another 10 days. Don't let us down. That's right. 10 days later, if you can't produce a product comparable to Humar, don't blame us for being merciless. Many members of the board of directors temporarily suspended their anger. One by one, they left the group chat. Relax, Tony. In these 10 days, I will help you deal with the board of directors. Obadiah said with a smile. Then, he also withdrew from the conference projection. Do you see that? It's very easy to deal with them. Tony turned around and smiled at Pepper. Oh, Tony. Do you know what you just said? In 10 days, develop a product that is even more powerful than Humar. Pepper had a face full of shock and seemed to be in disbelief. In her opinion, this Humar was already the current top existence. It could be said to be extremely difficult to surpass it. Tony, on the other hand, wanted to create a similar product within 10 days. It was no different from a fool's dream. Relax. I always had an idea in my mind. Tony pointed at his head and said proudly. It's just that it hasn't been realized yet. This Humar who just appeared has given me a lot of ideas. Tony said confidently. Chapter 17, world points accumulated. It was different from the gloomy clouds of other companies. This Hiden company is in a joyful scene. Many employees in the company were rejoicing, and each of them had a proud smile on their faces. You should know. This year, their company was jointly banned by several big shots. It could be said that he had disappeared for quite a while. But from today onwards, all of this was different. With Humar, this kind of trump card, their Hiden company no longer needed to be under others. The truth was indeed so. Just this morning alone, the number of people who wanted to book Humar's number was raised significantly. The number of people browsing the official website was also rising by significant amount. If not for their servers, the site might have been overloaded long ago. Countless investment agencies also came to them. They wanted to discuss the matter of investing and financing. However, they were all directly rejected by the Department of Economics. Hiden company had sufficient funds. There is no need to rely on financing and listing to make money. And the ruckus below was noisy. It had nothing to do with Levi. The current him. He was sitting in the office on the top floor of Hiden Intelligence headquarters, leisurely drinking his afternoon tea. He picked up the teacup in his hand and slowly took a few sips. Then he stood up. He walked to the side of the huge floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the entire scenery of New York. It was extremely pleasant. System, help me check my harvest this time. At this moment, Levi said in his heart. Immediately, in front of him, a screen that only he could see appeared. Kamen Rider Chronicle System. Host, Levi. Current identity, President of Hiden Intelligence. Unlocked World Kamen Rider 01. Unlocked Rider's Belt, 3. World Point obtained, 241,134. At the same time as he opened it, that world point was still jumping up and down. Obviously. Although that Humar had yet to be officially sold, it had already caused a sensation. Naturally, it had a great impact on the world. He saw that world points value was constantly rising. The corners of Levi's mouth could not help but curl into a smile. Looks like his performance yesterday really wasn't a waste. At this speed, soon, he would be able to unlock the legacy of the next Kamen Rider universe. And just as Levi was thinking by the window, there was a knock on the door. President, Director of the police station, George Stacy, has arrived downstairs to discuss something with you. Izu came in from outside the door and reported. Good. I'll get up right away. Levi closed the system, turned around and went downstairs with Izu. Downstairs, Hiden Intelligence. Ci la la. Several police cars were lined up one by one. The door opened with a creak. Several policemen got out of the car. One of them was tall and sturdy, looking like a Schwarzenegger. He glanced at Hiden building, and there seemed to be a little disdain in his eyes. Then, the police car at the front opening. Chief George brought a girl out of the car. This girl had a head of white hair. She had an exquisite figure and a pretty face. She looked delicate and charming, full of youthful vitality. Is this Hiden Intelligence? That's amazing. The white-haired beauty looked at Hiden Intelligence's headquarters and could not help but exclaim. She was the daughter of Chief George, Gwen Stacy. She was also a loyal fan of Hiden Intelligence. When she heard that her father was coming to Hiden Intelligence yesterday, she begged for a long time. Only then did her father agree to let her come along. Chief George, welcome. And at this moment, Hiden Intelligence headquarters glass door automatically opened. A handsome man in a white suit walked out. Needless to say, it was Levi. This scene. Gwen's eyes went straight. He had always heard that the president of Hiden Intelligence was a handsome guy. Seeing him today, he was 10 times more handsome than he had imagined. Good to see you all. Chief George replied with a smile. Chapter 18, Human vs Humar. In that case, please come in. Levi raised his hand and said very politely. The group of people walked into Hiden Intelligence's inner hall under Levi's lead. The first thing they saw was the hall of Hiden Intelligence headquarters. The hall was extremely spacious and colored in pure white. There were many high-tech products used. For example, on both sides, a 3D projection was used to repeatedly play Humar's promotional video. Gwen Stacy looked at the scene in front of her. Her face is full of awe. When they arrived at the entrance of the door, the security guard Humar, who was waiting at the side, scanned everyone present. Then, a polite smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "Welcome, Chief George, Miss Gwen." He prepared to say the names of everyone present and even made a gesture of invitation. The door seal automatically changed from red to green. Then next. Izu, show everyone around Hiden's interior. The secretary, Izu, said with a smile. Next. Izu led them to visit several departments of Hiden. All kinds of high-tech products. Everyone was dazzled and stunned. One had to know. Compared to today's company. At this time, Hiden Intelligence was at least 10 years ahead of them in terms of science and technology. Therefore, it looked particularly high-tech. After the tour. Next, they had to talk about business. Izu brought them to the simulation room located on the 10th floor of the headquarters. As for Levi, he had been waiting there for a long time. This simulation room had an extremely large area. When it was first established, it was to simulate all kinds of environments. Thus, they tested Humagir's ability to survive in the simulation. And now, Levi led them to the simulation place. It was specially set up for military Humagir. Kaka. The door to the simulation room opened. It was pitch black. Levi brought along George's team and walked in. He snapped his fingers. Jang jang. In an instant, several lights lit up. 100 military Humagir, dressed in neat uniforms, stood there. Their imposing manner was oppressive. Then everyone. To protect the peace of New York City. We, Hiden Intelligence, specially produced 100 military Humagir. And I will donate it to the New York police force for free. This will help stabilize the safety of New York City. Chief George glanced at it. He could not help but nod. But behind him, the tall and strong white police officer could not help but glare at him. There was still a hint of disdain in his eyes. And at this moment, 2 people walked out from the 100 Humagir. These 2 are the most outstanding existences among this group of military Humagir. In the future, they will also lead AIMS. Levi raised his hand and began to introduce. Needless to say, these 2 people were Isamu Fuwa and Yuya Iba. Chief George and his daughter Gwen were listening to Levi's explanation with great interest. However, behind them, there was a trace of disharmony. Why is there a woman Humagir? That robot seems to have thin arms and legs. Can we carry out the mission? At this time, the tall and strong white police officer could not help but tease his companion next to him. You bastard! What are you talking about? This fellow's voice was very soft. However, Isamu Fuwa heard everything clearly. He immediately frowned and shouted at them. As the 2 Humagir that Levi had personally designed. This Isamu Fuwa and Yuya Iba could be said to have greatly resembled the 2 characters in the drama. Even their personalities had been designed beforehand through the program. So, now that he heard someone else's provocation, how could this Isamu Fuwa endure it? He immediately retorted. No, calm down. Yuya Iba, who was at the side, opened her mouth to stop him. Her personality had been set to be a calm and sensitive existence. It could complement Isamu Fuwa's impulsive personality. Oh. Interesting. Did you see that? This robot provoked us. After seeing this scene, the white police officer did not hold himself. Instead, it became even worse. Seeing this situation, Levi couldn't help but narrow his eyes. As for Chief George, he couldn't help but frown in the face of his subordinate's impudence. It seems that this police officer doesn't trust our military Humagir very much. In that case, then we can ask this police officer to come and test it himself. Levi sneered. Good. I really want to see how this so-called Humagir is compared to humans. The white policeman heard this. He immediately sneered and cracked his neck. He cracked his knuckle and walked forward. His name was Frank. He was the trump card of the New York police station. He used to serve in the U.S. Marine Corps and assault team. After retiring from the army, he was transferred to the police department. The number of cases that he had handled was uncountable. He scoffed at the so-called Humagir. How could a mere artificial intelligence compare to humans? As a police officer, the most important thing is to have good skills. Why don't we compete in combat first? Officer Frank looked at Isamu Fuwa, who was opposite him, and said in a cold tone. Chapter 19, AIMS Shot Riser. As the ace police of New York, his fighting skills could be said to be one of the best. Whether it's Taekwondo, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or Jeet Kune Do, he knows it all. He had even won the championship of New York's boxing match. He had always been very confident in his skills. That's why he thinks he could knock down Humajir with a single punch. How about it? Do you have the guts for it? Frank said proudly. No problem. Isamu Fuwa agreed without hesitation. Very good. Then, let the fight begin. Officer Frank said confidently. He clenched his fist, which was as big as a sandbag, and placed it in front of him. He was like a war chariot, ready to attack. On the other hand, Isamu Fuwa, who was facing him, stood in place, as if he was not preparing anything at all. Humph! A robot is a robot. How can it compare to a human? The corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. The next second, he suddenly took a step forward, his muscles suddenly exerting a massive force. That right fist that was the size of a sandbag quickly waved towards Isamu Fuwa. Feel the power of my punch. This guy roared in his heart. Isamu Fuwa, who was facing him, was still motionless. Seeing this situation, Chief George, who was watching, could not help but be slightly stunned. This Humajir did not react to his attacks. Could it be? Does this robot still have a huge flaw? On the other hand, Levi, who was at the side, smiled without saying anything. It was not that Isamu Fuwa did not react. On the contrary, he was already fully prepared. On each of Humajir's bodies, there were dozens of combat skills. It could be said that every single one of those knowledge gives the Humajir an ability equal to the Grandmaster level. Moreover, through the scanning of their eyes, they were able to accurately analyze the opponent's combat skills. From then on, they would conduct data analysis in their brain. This way, they could predict the opponent's attack trajectory. Sure enough, the scene was just as Levi had expected. He only saw Isamu Fuwa facing the incoming fist. He did not make any big movements and only tilted his head. He cleanly dodged this fatal punch. What? How is this possible? Frank was slightly shocked. However, he quickly reacted. This must have happened by chance. Then, he threw another punch. However, Fuwa had already discovered his attack trajectory. Once again, he easily dodged it. The next few punches that Frank threw had undoubtedly hit empty air. It was as if he had hit cotton. Frank was played around. Then, it's my turn. Fuwa Isamu, who was facing him, also immediately brandished his fist. This punch did not have any fancy tricks. It was simply direct and heavily smashed into Frank's abdomen. It was like a heavy hammer. It directly sent him flying and then heavily fell to the ground. The entire process. It was like flowing water, extremely clean and fast. There was no pause. It was smooth to the extreme. This scene made George and Gwen, who were watching, widen their eyes. This was too fast. In just the blink of an eye, victory and defeat were decided. This Humajir in front of him was really powerful. How is it? Are you convinced now? Isamu Fuwa looked at Frank, who was lying on the ground, and asked directly. I don't accept it. Real police also have competence in firearms. You can't just become a police because of your fighting ability. This guy got up and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He was still quibbling. Levi saw this. He immediately clapped his hands. He saw the simulation room in front of him start operating. In less than a moment, a shooting range appeared in front of everyone. On the shooting range, there were a total of 10 targets. You need to shoot the target in the specified location. They will have to compare the time needs to do it. The one who shot the most rings with the shortest time would win. Frank pulled out the gun at his waist. As for Isamu Fuwa, he also took out a gun from behind him. However, this gun was obviously a little strange. The body of the gun was blue. The muzzle was slender. From the looks of it, there was a huge difference between them and ordinary firearms. This is... Chief George, who was at the side, was obviously confused. This is something I specially prepared for these two Humajir. Levi explained from the side. In fact, this blue gun was no other than his signature weapon. It was the AIMS shot riser that Isamu Fuwa used in the original work. Paired with the Progress Iki, he could transform into Kamen Rider. Of course, if he did not insert the Projuriseki, he could use it as an ordinary gun. Then, Let's begin. As soon as the referee, Izu, finished speaking, the two of them rushed out immediately. With a whoosh, Fuwa was like a black leopard, instantly surpassing Officer Frank. Then, he took out the gun in his hand, aimed at the target in front of him, and suddenly fired. Shoo! The bullet suddenly shot out, like an arrow leaving the bow, instantly hitting the target, 10 rings. Immediately after, it was the next target. Another 10 rings. It was due to the precision of the machine. The entire process was completed smoothly and smoothly. Its operation was extremely precise. The series of tricks made everyone present unable to take it in. It dazzled the eyes. His performance made Chief Frank sweat profusely. His movements were also slightly deformed. Finally, the entire shooting competition was over. The unbreakable speed was a full minute faster than that of Chief Frank. Moreover, all the shots awarded him 10 rings. The gun is really accurate. He completely crushed the competition. Chief Frank, after watching this, felt a burst of sweat. He no longer dared to say anything. Humajir could not compare to the words of humans. And this round of the competition, it also displayed Humajir's excellence to the fullest. Chief George, who was standing next to him, exclaimed in admiration. Chapter 20, The Progress Iki. Next, it was time for Levi and Chief George to talk. Last night, after Levi left, Chief George especially went to discuss this issue with New York City Governor. Although this Humajir was very advanced at present, but after all, they had yet to undergo a large-scale test. Therefore, they definitely could not make a big fuss about it. If they were caught by the media at that time, they would inevitably stir up a fearless dispute. There would inevitably be a fearless dispute. Hence, they chose a suitable testing ground. It was crucial. Residential areas. Firstly, they were excluded because the people living there were ordinary residents. There were also very few cases of crime. Sending AIMSS security team to those places was a waste of talent. It was also easy to cause unnecessary trouble. So, after some choices, the two of them set AIMSS location. It was set in New York. The Hell's Kitchen. It is located in the New York, Manhattan area. It was the most chaotic and lawless existence in the entire New York. Every year, there would be police officers who would die in it. The gangs were rampant and lawless. As time passed, even the police did not dare to enter. That place also became a famous foreign land. Countless criminals were hidden within. Since they had to test it, naturally, he had to choose the most difficult one. Therefore, Chief George and the Governor of New York decided on the test location. If the operation fails, that's not much of a loss for them, either. If this AIMS army successfully swept through the Hell Kitchen, it would also be an achievement. For them, it would also be an achievement. One stone two birds, why not? Levi saw through the thoughts of these two people very clearly. Not only would they not oppose it, but they would also support it. After all, the reason why he sent out these 100 Humajir was that not only he wanted to pass General Ross' test. Firstly, it was to pass General Ross' test. Secondly, it was to naturally absorb malicious intent. To let ARC create an even stronger existence. Let me ask. Was there anything more suitable place to absorb malicious intent other than New York? As a result, the two sides quickly reached a consensus. This was obviously a win-win proposal, how could anyone refuse? Good. Since that's the case, I'll mention don't make a police station as AIMSS base. Chief George, this area that was set aside. It was a deserted police station outside New York. Originally, it was to manage the New York area. However, after the previous chief officer who came to this place to take up his post did not survive more than a month. Later on, no one dared to come again. Over time, it was abandoned. Now that it had turned into AIMSS base, could be considered a recycling project. After the base was refurbished, other than there will be individual police officers who will occasionally go to supervise. The entire AIMS operation team would enjoy a high degree of autonomy. Happy to cooperate with you. After talking about everything, the two of them stood up and shook hands. Just as they were about to leave, Chief George exchanged a few words with Levi. His words seemed to be on his daughter. How could Levi not understand what he meant? Miss Gwen, if you are interested in our company, You can use the summer vacation time to come to our company as an intern. You have to know. The schools in America paid a lot of attention to life outside classes. If the student has experience in an internship in a large company or a large organization, it would undoubtedly provide a lot of help when applying for university. This was undoubtedly an exchange of favor. Regarding this, Levi was naturally aware of it. After sending off George, Levi returned to his office on the top floor. Izu was waiting on the side. Izu, help me arrange for Gwen's internship in our company. Remember, don't put her on an important post. Levi sat in the office chair and said lightly. Yes, President. Izu nodded immediately. One had to know. Although most of Hiden Intelligence's research had been put underground. But there were several floors in the upper space that were kept confidential. Unless you are within the inner core layer of the company, you would have no permission to enter. And among these, there were several levels. Naturally, they were studying Humar. However, there were several levels. They were researching an even more important topic. Driver and transformation progress keys. These two things. They were the necessary existences to transform into Kamen Rider. One must know. Although this Humar was more outstanding than humans. But that was all. Even if it was those military Humars. Their strength was only 1.5 times that of ordinary people. It was just a little stronger in terms of combat and shooting. If it was in an ordinary world, this might be enough. However, right now, they were in a world of Marvel. There are many superheroes and supervillains. They possessed strength equal to 10 times or even 100 times greater than ordinary people. Humar couldn't defend themselves alone. So, as early as the time when Humar set up the project, another research was also being conducted at the same time. That was the research on driver and transformation progress keys. Among Kamen Rider and 01, most of the Knight's transformation relied on these two things. Of course, this driver and transformation progress keys also had levels. The higher the level of the drive, the more power it could release. After a year of research, this Hiden company, they had already sent out the initial level driver and transformation progress keys. Just now, the AIMS shot riser that Fuwa Isamu used was one of the driver designed by Hiden. It could be perfectly matched with upgrade Projurisekis. But this driver and transformation Projurisekis were invented. They had been used in the laboratory for the simulation test. The real battle had yet to be carried out. There was no actual combat data. The next stage of transformation Projurisekis could no longer be developed. So this time, in fact, the AIMS guards was also responsible for the third task. How is it? Have you already given the things to the two of them? Levi sat on the sofa in the office and asked. Yes. According to your instructions, President. I have already given 2 pieces of the highest level upgrade, Projurisekis, to Isamu and Yua. The secretary, Izu, nodded immediately. Very good. Next, I want to see. What kind of effect will the first generation drive have on them? A smile appeared on the corner of Levi's mouth. As he smiled, he raised his hand. On the desk in front of him was a chess set. He lifted one of the white crystal knights and took a step forward. Chapter 21, XP of the Kamen Rider Demon. Then, let's wait for the game to develop. After saying that, Levi laid back down on his office chair. Oh right, President. Just now, I detected a suspicious person. Izu, who was at the side, suddenly said. Oh, suspicious person. Interesting. Levi raised his eyebrows. Could it be that those giants were unwilling to lose their share price? Were they planning to sneak into our company and steal Humar's secrets? Open the surveillance camera. Let me take a look. Levi straightened his body again and ordered. Yes, Sir President. Izu nodded slightly and waved his hand. In front of Levi, a clear projection was displayed. What was shown inside was the company's surveillance could be seen in it. In this surveillance, it seemed to be a group of high school students. When Levi saw this scene, he immediately felt that it was a little funny. Unexpectedly, the suspicious person that Izu was talking about was a guy from this crowd. President. The suspicious person I am talking about is this gentleman. Immediately, the surveillance screen zoomed in. A figure appeared on the surveillance screen. This is Peter Parker. Levi looked at the person on the screen and narrowed his eyes. And at this moment, in Hiden Intelligence Headquarters Exhibition Hall, a group of high school students, led by their teachers, were looking at Hiden Intelligence. Oh! Oh my god! This is the AI robot dog that Hiden released earlier, however, the production has been suspended for a long time. The little fatty, Ned, stuck to the glass and said excitedly. This is the limited edition AI glasses that were sold 2 years ago. It was all snatched up from the store like crazy. He looked at the equipment in the exhibition hall and said excitedly. There are also the 6 newly released models of Humar. All of them have been displayed. This is too cool. At this moment, Ned was died by excitement. The technology here was too cool. However, what stood in stark contrast to him was Parker, who was beside him. At this moment, he seemed a little dizzy. He sat on a chair. He looks lethargic. Hey, Parker. What is going on? This is Hiden Intelligence. Why aren't you excited at all? Ned asked curiously. One had to know. This Parker was a fan of Hiden who was even more fanatical than him. Now that he was in Hiden's exhibition hall, he should be even more excited than himself. I'm very excited. Parker said weakly. Is that so? Ever since we came out of the Osborne industry, I feel that something is wrong with you. Ned frowned and asked suspiciously. Through the surveillance video, Levi heard their conversation clearly. Could it be that Parker has just been bitten by that radioactive spider? Interesting. Levi asked curiously. Yes. President, showing the detection result. We have discovered that the genes in his body are currently undergoing intense recombination. There is another 50% chance that he will turn into a mutant. That is why I purposely added him to the list of suspects. At this time, Izu explained. When Levi heard this, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl into a smile. One had to know. In Kamen Rider, when the protagonist met a weird person, they were usually in the form of spiders. As the saying goes, spiders are worshipped through the heavens, their magic power is boundless. Unexpectedly, he actually encountered it himself this time. President, do you want to catch him? Izu asked. No need. Mark him for me and treat him as a target of observation. I will follow him up, on my way. Levi said directly. One had to know. To deal with future dangers. As well as for the sake of obtaining world point. In the later stages, he would set up a plan to deal with superheroes. He needs to take some superheroes under his command. Moreover, he would need to change them into Kamen Rider. This was his goal. And this Spider-Man would undoubtedly become the first part of his plan. However, if he were to modify it, what should he change it into? What should he transform into? Levi could not help but think. Speaking of which, among Kamen Rider, the only Kamen Rider related to spiders is Kamen Rider Kilbus in Kamen Rider Build. Of course. This Peter Parker, no matter what, could not be trained to be in existence like Kilbus. He looks similar to the male lead in Kamen Rider Build, War Rabbit. They like the same things. They are also filled with justice. If it can be made to create a rider. Thinking about it, it was quite interesting. Spider Metal, best match, Metal Spider form. Spider Venom, best match, Poisonous Spider Hazard form. Apart from that, in Kamen Rider Revis, the new Kamen Rider demons also look like him. No matter which one. They were all very interesting. Of course. These things. He was not in a hurry. The first thing he had to do now was to expand his foundations. However, some preparations could also begin now. Chapter 22, Hiden Intelligence Hidden Mission. He was thinking. He called Izu over and whispered a few words into her ear. Izu nodded repeatedly. Very good. Then, I will stay here and watch the show with peace of mind. Levi lay back on the chair and said with a smile on his face. And below. As time went on, Peter Parker looked a little uneasy. His whole body began to become really hot. His head also began to become extremely heavy. It was as if something was constantly striking within. This pain was getting more and more unbearable. Peter held his head with both hands. His body could no longer hold on, and he fell straight to the ground. And the little fatty, Ned, saw this and immediately panicked. Peter, what's wrong with you? Peter. Everyone around him. They also quickly gathered together around him. Quick, call the doctor. I'm calling. Call the ambulance. In an instant, the entire exhibition room was in chaos. Everyone. Please don't worry. However, at this moment, a sweet voice sounded. Everyone looked over and saw that Izu was already standing beside them. Our Hiden has a special medical room. There is a professional Dr. Humajir to diagnose the patient. Then, please kindly help to bring this gentleman and follow me. Izu raised his hand and explained. Oh, okay. The little fatty Ned lifts Parker. Then, he followed Izu and rushed to Hiden's medical room. Not long after, they took the elevator and arrived at the medical department. Nurse Humajir, who was inside, took Parker from Ned. Immediately after. Then, he brought her into the medical room. Ned wanted to follow her in, but he was stopped. Sir, please forgive us, for the medical area is restricted for public. Dr. Humajir said. Oh. The little fatty Ned scratched his head and stopped. In the medical room, several doctors Humajir looked at each other. Among them, there was a flash of blue light. They had received some information. So, after injecting an anesthetic into Parker, these doctors Humajir followed Levi's instructions. They underwent a small surgery on Parker's body. Moreover, they even extracted 1,000 milliliters of blood from his body. Poor Parker. His mind was dizzy and he had no idea what was happening in the outside world. Half a day later, he opened his eyes in a daze. He saw himself lying on the bed. The pain just now had completely disappeared. It was as if he had been reborn. It was indescribably relaxed. Beside him, a nurse Humajir was standing guard. Sorry, may I ask where this place is? Parker sat up and asked in a panic. Good morning, Mr. Parker. This is Hiden Intelligence's medical department. You fainted in our exhibition room just now. So we brought you here and did a detailed examination. Nurse Humajir immediately explained. Thank you. Peter Parker quickly opened his mouth to thank her. Then, he scratched his head in embarrassment. However, right at this moment, the door to the medical room opened. A figure walked in. Parker looked up. When he saw the person, he immediately opened his mouth in awe. His eyes were filled with surprise. President Levi. Hey, my name is Peter. Peter Parker. I am your loyal fan. Parker stuttered. He did not know where to place his hand. Hello, Peter. Welcome to Hiden Intelligence. I heard that you fainted outside. That's why I specifically came to take a look. As for Levi, who was walking toward him, he was smiling. Thank you for your concern. Parker was so excited that his face turned a little red. One had to know. He had always liked electronic products. Back then, Hiden Intelligence appeared out of nowhere. He was immediately attracted by the product they released. After that, he became a loyal fan of his. As for Hiden's president, he even regarded him as his idol. Unexpectedly, this time, he came to visit Hiden Intelligence. Not only did he see his latest product, Humajir, but he also saw his idol. It was really worth it. Next, Peter took the initiative to speak, revealing his love for Hiden. And he revealed his understanding of Hiden Intelligence's product. After hearing this, Levi smiled slightly. He originally thought that if he wanted to recruit Parker, he would need to use some shady methods. There are still some tricks that need to be used. Unexpectedly, this Parker was actually a loyal fan of his company. As a result, things became much simpler. He first gave Parker a few words of encouragement. Then he opened his mouth and issued an invitation. Peter. I can see that you like electronic products. Just in time. Our company still has a few internship posts. Do you want to try? After Parker heard this, he was even more at a loss. Really? Can I? He seemed a little unconfident. Of course. Our company needs an existence like you. Levi raised his hand and patted him on the shoulder. After encouraging him for a while, he turned around and left. And the door closed. The secretary, Izu, was already waiting outside. Levi can no longer hide the smile on his face. Chapter 23, The Criminal Network. Alright. After that, remember to get someone to send him home. If there are any abnormalities, remember to report to me in time. Levi glanced behind him. Then, he instructed Izu, who was beside him. Don't worry, President. Izu immediately nodded. While Levi was slowly carrying out his plan, IMSS guards had also started to move out. After going to the headquarters of New York's police station to register, they went to the police station. They went to the police station assigned to them. It was said to be the police station. But now, it looked more like a ghost house. When Isamu and Yua saw this, they couldn't help but look at each other. But fortunately, Hiden Intelligence's support quickly caught up with this issue. A team of craftsmen Humar was sent out. They carried out a large-scale renovation operation on the entire police station. Their efficiency was so high that it made one's hair stand on end. In less than half a day, the originally worn-out police station had been refreshed. It looked like a newly established base. At the door, metal letters which writes AIM's logo were shining brightly. Even the walls were completely painted. In any case, Humar did not need to worry about formaldehyde poisoning like humans. Not only that. At the same time as the renovation, Hiden Intelligence had also installed a lot of high-tech equipment in this police station. For example, electronics cage, multifunctional weapon armory, and so on. And among them, the most important thing was that there was also a server named Criminal Network. It was specially made for AIMSS guards. Its function. It was to help AIMSS guards to monitor the entire New York. One had to know. In modern society, the network had already infiltrated all aspects of human society. Even New York, which ran rampant among criminals, was no exception. And this server would focus on monitoring all the electronic products in New York. The information released by them would be summed up. Once there was a crime, this central hub would react immediately. They will immediately display it. This will help AIMSS team members to attack them as soon as possible. In reality, this was designed by Levi according to the psychometric system in Japan. And after everything was installed, the AIMS guards moved in. As the captain of AIMS, Fuwa Isamu was already rubbing his hands together. If he wanted to go to New York, he had to show off his skills. As for Yua Yaiba, as the commander of AIMSS actions, she naturally wouldn't be so hasty. Isamu, next, let's go to the conference room first and have a meeting. Only after that, we will take action. She typed on the keyboard and said to Isamu, who was wiping his gun. Is there a need to be so bureaucratic? Isamu seemed a little impatient. Of course it is necessary. This is New York. Yua Yaiba replied seriously. All right. Then I'll see you in the meeting room in an hour. An hour later, Yua Yaiba pushed open the door of the conference room. At this moment, the people of AIMSS guards were already waiting inside. In addition, there were 1 or 2 people sent by New York's police station to be in charge of the investigation. All right, everyone. After an hour of investigation, I have a preliminary understanding of the distribution of New York's forces. Everyone, please take a look. Yua Yaiba lightly tapped the remote control in his hand. The big screen in front of the conference room instantly turned on. The entire map of New York was displayed above. Every street, every building was visible. Then, on the map, red dots of different sizes began to appear. These red dots represented the territory controlled by the gangs. According to statistics, there are a total of 23 gangs in New York. Among them, there are some who can be assumed as the backbone. There are only 5 major gangs. They are the Bigfoot Gang, the Black Hand Gang, the Viper Gang, the Blood Gang, and the Hand Union. If you want to eliminate crimes in New York, you have to start with them first. Yua Yaiba told him everything he had investigated. These words. The few members of New York's police station who were present were shocked. One must know. Inside New York, all forces were intertwined. Moreover, the information was kept secret and extremely strictly confidential. The New York police had once sent out dozens of spies. They wanted to sneak in and find out some information. In the end, in a few days, they were dragged out and brutally dismembered. This way. As a result, there were no more police officers who dared to probe deeper. As for the AIMS guards, they had been established for less than a day. They had already thoroughly investigated the entire power of New York. This efficiency was simply shocking. Then next, I will analyze the characteristics of each sect one by one. And their weaknesses. The more New York police officers listened, the more shocked they became. This motherfucker! How was this understanding of them? They had dug up all these gangs. Not only had the organizational structure of the gangs been thoroughly investigated. Even the big cases they had committed were listed out one by one. What is this Humajir? Wasn't they too powerful? In fact, the reason why Uayaiba was able to gather so much information was because of the help of the Space Criminal Network. It was all thanks to the help of the Space Criminal Network that he was able to gather so much information. Chapter 24, Harvesting the Malice. In a short period, they transferred the phone, camera, and internet records that New York had had in the past 10 years. Then, they divided them into different categories. Only then did they calculate all of these things. In addition, Uayaiba was sorting things out on the side. She is really meticulous. After hearing this news, Isamu, who was sitting at the front, immediately looked a little furious. Damn it! I didn't expect these guys to do so many lawless things. This is really infuriating. He clenched his right hand into a fist. He gritted his teeth and said that the other members of New York's police station saw him in such a state. They could not help but praise him in their hearts. This Hiden Intelligence was really powerful. They made Humajir show a human-like emotion. In fact, they were thinking too much. The ordinary Humajir would not be like Fuwasamu and Uayaiba, who had rich emotions. In the end, the reason why Fuwasamu and Uayaiba were able to display such intelligence was because of the technological power of Humajir. Or was it because the two of them had been specially created by Levi and Ark together? In his mind, Levi had constructed their appearances and personalities. As for Ark, it used a large amount of computing power and poured it into the two of them. It was not just his appearance and skills. Even their personality had been calculated precisely. Therefore, the level of intelligence of the two of them was higher than the ordinary Humajir. Even to the extent that they could be said to be Humajir's singularity. This made the two of them more like humans than ordinary Humajir. Alright. I have already finished explaining the general situation. Uayaiba looked at the people present and continued. According to the information, tonight, one of the 5 Backbones gangs, Viper Gang, will conduct a drug transaction with a gang from Russia. At that time, this will be the best time for us to move out. Uayaiba glanced at the clock in the conference room. At this time, it was already 5 in the afternoon. There was not much time left until night. As for Fuwasamu, when he heard this news, he immediately stood up. Good. Everyone, get ready to move out. Now, come with me, and let's clear this sinful place. He pressed his hands on the table and looked down at Humajir. Yes. Sir. Hearing Fuwasamu's order, the military Humajir below instantly stood up and shouted in unison. This scene gave the people from the police headquarters a fright. Wilson's Pub. This bar was famous in New York. Because his boss was an existence known to everyone in the underworld. So, even in New York's criminal ring, basically, no one dared to cause trouble here. Over time, here, this was also the place where the major gangs came to negotiate. And today, a grand negotiation was about to be held here. As the host, it was one of the 5 major gangs, the Viper Gang. The people who were talking to them were the gangsters from Russia. Outside the bar, they were full of tall and strong men. They were dressed in black and wore sunglasses. It looked awe-inspiring. Inside the bar, deafening music was playing. On the dance floor, bodies were moving. Some of the backbone members of the gang were hugging the beautiful lady and dancing wildly. In the innermost private room, the negotiation was underway. Welcome to our Viper Gang. A beautiful golden-haired lady was holding a pipe in her mouth as she spoke with satisfaction. Her figure was graceful. She was coiled on the sofa, causing one's imagination to run wild. She was the leader of the Viper Gang, Madame Viper. Next, let's talk about your conditions. She raised her long and narrow eyelashes and said charmingly. And at this moment, on the opposite street, there were several vehicles with the logo of Ames. They were rushing over from afar. With a few sounds, they stopped steadily in front of the powerful and inferior bar. Who is it? Those little brothers who were in charge of guarding the door immediately frowned and said. Who knew? The door opened, and what responded to them was a black muzzle. Not good. The little brothers guarding the door immediately turned pale with fright. They hurriedly wanted to pull out the guns at their waists. However, their speed was clearly inferior to that of a bullet. Bang! Humar, who was in the car, suddenly pulled the trigger. In a split second, guns were shot everywhere. Those guys were instantly blasted to the ground. Immediately after, rays of red light burst out of those guys' bodies. They flew straight to the bodies of those military soldiers. Humar. Wang! Instantly, those military Humar's eyes turned red. On this dark night, it was extremely dazzling. Receiving malice. Ready to be transmitted to ARC satellite. Wang! These malice data quickly passed through the network data. It was sent to ARC's satellite located on the 6th underground floor. Uploading, malice. Satellite ARC, who was still in hibernation. It was quickly activated. The surface of it also began to glow with a red glow. Chapter 25, Rhino and Madame Viper, Danger Arise. Levi, who was sitting at the top of Hiden. Through the encrypted device, he also heard ARC's notification. Oh! ARC, have you begun to absorb malice? If that's the case, then AIMSS troops seem to have already moved out. Levi sat in his office chair and said indifferently. Izu. Help me to display the scene. I want to enjoy the first battle of AIMS. He picked up the teacup in his hand and took a sip. Yes, President. Izu raised her hand and waved it gently. Instantly, several screens lit up in front of Levi. On the screens, real-time images of the scene were playing. These images were mostly from Humar's perspective. Moreover, they came from different directions. It was as if there were many positions in the camera. This way, he could see everything in the surroundings. As for Levi, he would be able to watch the battle better. At the same time, outside the bar, the AIMS guards, with lightning speed, knocked down all the guards. Their movements were clean and neat. They did not disturb anyone. Now, all of you, get out of the car. Prepare to attack. Holding AIMS shot riser in his hand, Fuwasamu immediately jumped out of the car. Uayaiba, who was at the side, followed closely behind. The remaining Humar also held their guns in their hands and moved sideways to the back of the wall. This Wilson pub has only one entrance through the gate. Fuwasamu took a deep breath. Then he raised his foot and kicked upwards. Boom! The door instantly shattered. Charge! With AIMS shot riser in his hand, he immediately charged in. The other military Humars also did not want to be outperformed. With red eyes, they also rushed in. And at this time, the people in the bar had not reacted to what had happened. In a blur, he saw a large group of people rushing in. Not good. There's an enemy attack. The many gangsters in the middle reacted. But it was useless. Because at this moment, the bar was dark. No one could see clearly where the enemy was. As for military Humar, they did not have such worries at all. Their eyes were equipped with night vision. Even in the dark night, they could still identify objects. One of the military soldiers, Humar, carried a gun and immediately started scanning. The human faces were immediately displayed. Viper Gang member, Jimmy. Age, 30. Danger level, criminal. Execution level, can be shot. After the test was over, this military Humar immediately raised his hand, hit the gun and pulled the trigger. Bang! That guy's head immediately exploded. And the malice related to him was instantly captured. In a split second, the entire bar became a slaughterhouse. Gunshots and screams rang out. Of course, it was not like no one had resisted. It was just that the bullets they shot out doesn't hurt the Humar at all. Even if there were some occasions when they would hit Humar's body, it only made a small scratch. It didn't affect them at all. And at this time, in the private room, the two leaders who had been chatting happily also heard the movement outside. Just as they were puzzled, the door was opened. A gangster stumbled in. Not good, madam, there's a group of people outside. They are slaughtering our brothers. As soon as he finished speaking, another bullet shot into his chest. This guy, just like that, fell straight to the ground. There's actually someone who dares to cause trouble here. Madam Viper, the leader of the Viper Gang, immediately sat up from the sofa. She said with a cold face. Ha ha ha. It seems that your deterrence is not enough. He saw a tall and sturdy figure sitting in the shadows opposite him. A hand was constantly stuffing something into his mouth. The other hand was holding a huge wine glass. Inside was several liters of beer. After swallowing the last mouthful, he gulped down several mouthfuls of wine. Only then did this guy stand up from his original spot. The light shone down. His appearance was exposed to the light. He was 2 meters tall. It had a large and wide waist. It was covered in a grey leather jacket. There was a long horn on its head. On the outside, he looked like a rhinoceros. In fact, just like his appearance, they called him Rhino. He was originally just an ordinary gang member. However, he was tempted by power and money. He chose to accept a highly dangerous chemical radiation experiment. He attached a layer of strong polymer to his skin. This layer of rhinoceros hide was impenetrable. It could resist any high or low temperature.